Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Picture This, a show where we go through every single Best Picture Oscar nominee of all time. We are now years deep in this thing, finally getting around to 2004 as part of our wish list series. This is Chad's pick for a year that he has chosen, handpicked, that he wanted to talk about here on the channel. Chad, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. We are like over halfway done with all the Oscar stuff, and it's like getting kind of weird where it's like I've been doing this for so long that I'm just like, I know we still have a lot to go, so I'm not like so sad. But like when we get to the end of this, I mean, we'll always still have to be going because there'll be new slates every year. But like then it'll just be like one a year. But you know, we'll get there a while in the future.
We have ideas.
I'm doing great. I'm excited for the slate that we have today because I think it might be all over the place with all of our rankings.
All of ours? Don't you mean both of ours, Chad?
No, I said all of ours.
All of ours. Wait, the graphic changed. Are we? Oh, it's Matt. It's Matty Fresh. How you doing, Matt? Matt Chapmond, co-host of Framewreck, here to give his expertise on the year 2004. Welcome, Matt. How you doing?
Oh, I'm so excited to talk about these movies. I have a little bit of a history with this slate, so awesome. I'm very excited to talk about
Very nice. Well, I'm going to do a record-setting earliest slate drop. Usually I wait till like 10 minutes in and be like, oh yeah, that's right, we're talking about these movies. But I'm just going to drop the slate right now because we have a lot to get to, and I'm sure these two especially have a lot to talk about considering one picked the slate, one picked to guest on this slate. But the movies in this slate are Martin Scorsese's The Aviator, Finding Neverland, $1 Million Baby, Ray, and Sideways. So those are the films we'll be talking about. A lot of films from directors we've already covered on this show. Clint Eastwood, Martin Scorsese, Alexander Payne, and then some films that are kind of setting forth these genres that we'd see a lot of films stem from in the coming years after this release, so all across the board. So I'm really excited to talk about this slate. As Chad said, it could be all over the place just because we do a little behind the scenes sometimes and we're like, well, how many did you like? How many did you dislike? And this is one of those times where it's a little all over the place, where Matt loves mostly all of these. We all kind of have our number one that we think is like above all the rest number one, but that might be something different. But that's the part of the show that we love, and that is also why we're all going to be okay when my number 5 ends up being everyone's number 1 and vice versa. Just kidding. But we're excited to talk, and I'm excited to chat with y'all, and maybe some opinions will even change on the show, because that also happens too.
It happens all the time. And what I'm predicting, I think Matt is going to be the highest on the slate. I think I'm going to be somewhere in the middle, but like skew higher, and I think Dylan's going to be a little bit lower, like overall.
Yeah, and that's not to say, again, like a slate that doesn't have 5 10 out of 10 movies like 1975, that doesn't make it a bad slate. Like I don't think a lot of these movies are bad per se. It's just, for me, there's one that is above the rest and one that's below the rest. But that's kind of nice, because then 2 through 4, it's going to be kind of fun, because I can kind of mold that as the show goes and figure out where I exactly want to land on all of those. Not to make a plane reference, considering a big plane movie in this one, but yeah.
This slate also has like 3 biopics, and I know how some people feel about biopics. Like, there's a lot, and if they're not doing something interesting, it can feel a little bit, So we'll get there. But
yeah, let me just say that this did kind of start the biopic boom that we've been in for 20 years.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we'll definitely talk about that too, because I think that's also important because we're a show that talks about things in retrospect, right? So it's like, like if we were to do this in 2005, there's a chance this ranking is all different. But like, we're now in a year where we've seen so many of all these types of films. We've also seen more Scorsese films released. We've seen more Eastwood films. We've seen more Payne films. We've seen Johnny Depp's career and where that's gone. We've seen where Leo's career has gone. We've seen, all these things, which I think is very interesting. We have people like Jamie Foxx and Morgan Freeman and, people who, are more tasteful then than they are now. So I think there's a lot of interesting conversation to be had. We're going to try to keep it as much on the movies themselves, but I think it's important to also look at context and legacy and all that, especially when it's our show, it's our rules. But this show rules because we get to talk to our guests who, some of whom have like lived through this. All three of us lived through this year. Obviously I was a baby, I was 6, so like I watched the Oscars to see what The Incredibles would win, and it wins something. And Spider-Man 2, it wins something. And Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events also wins something. This was a year where like everything was very well spread across the board. There wasn't really one film kind of dominating all the awards, and that's true with the precursors as well, which we'll get to. But really quickly, you are a guest, Matt. But what was your what was going on in 2004 for you? And you can talk a little bit about like just these movies in general as well. But your relationship to the slate.
I'm going to talk about some of the specifics of that year while we're talking about the movies, because there's context for these. But I would just say that while I think that the 2004 year is not quite as timeless as it felt like it was going to be back then, I will say that one thing I've noticed is that every 5 years on the 4s and 9s, there's a really good film year. 1994, 1999, in my opinion, 2004, 2009, all the way to 1999 2019, where we had that really great year. So this for me has always fallen into that year. Rewatching some of these, I'm like, okay, so it's not quite as timeless as I remember this slate being, but it was just a really great year. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind came out in 2004, which is Dylan and I, one of our favorite movies. There was it was a really great year for film for me. Plus, I was 20. I turned 20 in 2004. And so like there was like this independence that I kind of was getting. And so one of the things that I decided to do this year, and this is the first year that I had fully decided to do it, was I decided I'm going to watch every movie that's nominated for Best Picture. Because that's really what most people did if they were doing the death race back then.
It was all
the death race didn't exist, obviously, but access to all of these was not nearly what it is today. So, so the feat was really making sure you saw all of the Best Picture, which even then that wasn't like a widespread thing. It was just something I decided to do that year. So I was like, all right, I want to watch all 3 of these movies, or all 5 of these movies before they come out. I saw Ray and Finding Neverland in the movie theater when they came out. But the other 3 came out in Oscars, in at the end of 2004, to kind of for that push. Yeah. And so and I lived in a kind of a small town where we didn't really, our theater, we had a 5-screen theater, and they didn't really get everything that that a lot of other places would get. And so I ended up having to drive to Oklahoma City, which is about 2 hours away from where I lived. Wow. And I planned out a day. I planned out a triple feature. It was my first ever triple feature. Nice. I went to one yesterday after work. So that's how triple features have advanced for me. Is that they're commonplace now. But back in early 2005, I had never watched 3 movies in a row in a movie theater before, let alone driven 2 hours and 2 hours back in my old beat up Ford truck. Wow. 1990 Ford pickup truck. Oh my gosh. Which was old back then, but not nearly as old as it sounds now.
Yeah. What were the 3 you saw that day? Like, what were the 3?
That day? Okay, so I'd seen Ray and Finding Neverland, so I saw The Aviator first because it was the longest, and I knew that I was going to need to get that one out of the way. I walked out of that movie going, this movie's winning Best Picture. Even though I wasn't, and we'll get into it, I wasn't like the biggest fan of it, but I was like, that has everything that it needs. Like that movie's going to win Best Picture. Then I saw Sideways, and my mind was blown. I was like, that movie is winning Best Picture. And then to end the evening, it had gotten late. I think I went and had some dinner, and then I came back and watched $1 Million Baby. And
what a movie to end on!
Right.
Oh my God.
And guys, let me tell you, this won't surprise you. I walked out of that movie going, okay, that's
gonna win.
Picture.
And you were right.
And I was right in the end.
And you were one of the only people in the world too that probably thought it too. You probably could have made some bank on that too.
I could have.
We'll get to
that was a big joke back then for people. Is that okay? So 2002 or the 2002 film year. I famously, amongst my friends, was all on the Two Towers is going to win Best Picture that year, which was stupid in retrospect. Because I wasn't a big fan of Chicago. I'm not a big fan of Rob Marshall's musicals. So like I was like on board. That was the last time I was wrong about what was going to win Best Picture until Green Book beat Roma.
Gotcha.
And so it was kind of a running joke that I would like make my list, make my predictions, and I would usually be wrong about one, and it was usually like supporting actress because that was a lot of the time up in the air. And people would be like, you should bet on this, but I live in Oklahoma and that's not strictly legal. But
strictly.
Yeah, strictly. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's not it's pretty cool. So that was always a big thing, is that like the next day, that Monday, people would come into the video store where I worked and be like, and we talk about it, and I'd be like, yeah, I predicted all correct except this one. Like, oh, you should have really bet on the Oscars. And every year I'm like, I really should do that next year. And I never did. And I never have. And I never probably will, because now it's become like this sacred thing for me. Yeah. But yes, I would have made a lot of money if I had predicted that movie.
When you were doing your triple feature and you were going, that's going to win, that's going to win, that's going to win. Was it a cumulative thing, or were you updating each time? Like, no, the Aviator's no longer going to win. Sideways is going to win. No, Sideways is no longer going to win. $1 Million Baby's going to win.
That's how it was. Like, it was like, okay, so it was kind of like I got done with the Aviator, and I was like, these last two movies are going to have to blow me away for me to think that they are going to win. And again, I wasn't, and we'll get to it because it's the first movie on the slate here, but I wasn't the hugest fan. I wasn't the biggest fan of that, but I recognized the potential, and especially it like was nominated out the ass.
And we'll talk about the whole Scorsese of it all, because at this point he still had not won.
Exactly. So I was so like I walked out of the Aviator, I was like, these other two are going to have to do something special. When I walk out of Sideways, it wasn't necessarily that it was this Oscar darling, although today I think it would be seen as much more viable than it was back then. Because back then we had come off of like Gladiator winning Best Picture and stuff like that. Yeah. So like you felt like maybe there was going to be this like epic thing. Yeah, Chicago Webb, but it was a big musical thing. Like it was Two Towers or Return of the King just won the year before. So like you felt like epics have this kind of foot in the door. And today I think that you would probably consider Sideways like way up there in terms of viability on that. But when I came out, I was just like, everything about it just kind of hit this tone for me and really spoke to me as a person, that I was just like, okay, I see here now why this could definitely win, and I think it's going to. And that's kind of the way. When I got $1 Million Baby, I was like, just forget about the rest of them. This one is going to win.
I think that's a really interesting point to think about, though. Is like when you're looking at like, you know, what won literally the year before, and like what's like pushing cinema forward, where you're like, you know, Return of the King just won. So that's like this big epic fantasy film. Like it's not a historical piece. It's just a nerdy kind of thing, but it's like a great movie. And then like you go to this slate that has mostly biopics, a boxing movie, and a big Scorsese film. So then I would think, like, would they really go back to like a kind of like a boring like biopic kind of thing that feels safe, or would they push it to Aviator, $1 Million Baby type of thing? And I guess they did. And
that's the argument every year too. It's like there's always your big movies, your Dunes, and that's the only thing I can think of right now. But you know, your bigger blockbusters. But then you also have like the smaller indies, and then you also have like the stuff in between, which are your more like, you know, your historical pieces, your movies about Hollywood, which we also see here as well, and then like your indie comedy, so the sports movie as well. So I think that's what's cool about this slate, is you have like kind of every single film fits like the archetype of a Best Picture winner at some point in time. It's just a matter of what film was the moment and the time. And we'll talk a lot about the actual Oscar race going in, because I have some interesting just behind the scenes in that, and just like the Oscar race, who was ahead, who pulled ahead. But yeah, like because the Aviator is your big kind of grander, kind of epic, like Hollywood about Hollywood, and then Finding Neverland is a little bit more of your like kind of maybe you would see in like the 80s and 90s, the more like sweeter, sentimental, like charming kind of biopic, but like a little bit more lighter, even though there's darker stuff in there. And then Ray was your music film, Million Dollar Baby was the sports film, and then Sideways was kind of your indie comedy. So like every single like representation is represented here. So that's what also makes the discussion and the ranking very difficult.
Right. And speaking of an archetype of a Oscar slate, I did want to mention a thing, and this would be much cooler if it had been 1 year later, because the Oscar ceremony did happen 20 years after this slate of movies came out, but the film year was 2023. But listen to the nominees, which you guys have covered this, so you would know. But the nominees for in 2023 were big epic historical movie Oppenheimer, The Holdovers,
Alexander Payne, yeah,
Killers of the Flower Moon,
Scorsese,
yeah, Maestro, the
music biopic,
demon music biopic, and Barbie and Poor Things, which I equate to Finding Neverland, in that they are both it's like imaginative like thing. Yeah, it was it would have been so cool if that had happened for the 2024 film year, because that would have been exactly 20 years, but no, it was 1 year off. But
interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. What else was going on in 2004 though, Chad? Do you have any recollection? You were 14 at this point.
I was 14. 2004 feels like a big year. It feels like so many great things were coming out, and we'll talk about some of those, of course. I don't know. It just feels like kind of like a pinnacle year for some reason.
Yeah,
it's like that. I feel like that's why like Matt, was talking about like sometimes the 4s and the 9s. I don't know. It's like basically the middle of the decade.
Yeah, and we'll also talk when we talk about the films as well that didn't make the cut. This was also a big year for like just blockbuster filmmaking as well. Like huge year for franchise films, sequels, even movies that were original but then would become like kind of pop culture.
I think
like,
that's
staples.
why. I think that it just feels like, so it's kind of like goes back to like 2001 when Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter like both started, like the big franchises and stuff. 2004, you had a lot of sequels and stuff like that just felt really big. So, well,
it's like 2008 too, where it's like the MCU starts the same year as The Dark Knight comes out, the same year as WALL-E happens, and those three movies kind of not as much Iron Man, but the other two kind of make the Academy change their mind and say we want to let more films in, so the bigger blockbusters, the big studio films can get in, like Avatar, and which I think would still got nominated the next year regardless. But you know what I mean? Like I do think it's very interesting to see that this year there's no big like huge blockbusters really. I mean, like one that's obviously there are a few that have big budgets, but none of these are big like IP studio franchise films, so at least I don't think so. I mean, Finding Neverland's the closest with like IP, but but we'll talk about it. But give us some history though, what was going on in the world, Chad, in 2004. Then we'll get some births, some deaths, some albums, and then maybe a surprise album on Matt's end too.
And when we get when we get there with the films, it'll be interesting to hear what we think should have been nominated if it was a 10 slate. That's always like a fun project. Like, what if this one was a 10 film slate? What would they have thrown? It's like 1994, Lion King definitely would have gotten in.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer. All right, history. Sorry, we've delayed this so long. NASA's Spirit and Opportunity rovers land on the surface of Mars. Janet Jackson suffers a wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl halftime show, and her career would kind of never be the same. Very sexist thing there. Yeah. The Gherkin opens in London. It's called The Gherkin. The Seattle Central Library opens in Washington State. I wonder if Carly goes there sometimes. A transit of Venus occurs. If you don't know what that is, it's like where from the Earth you see Venus going across the sun, and it's like a little dot. Nice. I had to look it up because I was like, what the hell is that? NASA launches, it's a lot of space stuff. NASA launches the space probe Messenger to study Mercury. Armed robbers steal famous paintings like. He was trying to be very subtle.
It just turned into a catastrophe.
Click
My
that
whole mic fell off because I forgot my headphones were plugged in to that. I will edit that out, but I just showed my NASA emblem on the back of my sweatshirt. Sorry if that was the loudest thing to ever happen in your ears, and I can't.
Oh no, it was fine.
Oh, it's because I unplugged my thing. That's why. Oh my gosh. Just repeat the bunch of space stuff and continue from there.
Don't edit it out. That was amazing.
Okay. Well,
edit okay. It out, but don't like do the when the crash happens, then do a boop.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe I'll keep all this in, but maybe I'll put a sound effect over so it doesn't like make anyone else's ears bleed when they're listening.
It wasn't that loud.
Okay,
lower
good.
The volume too.
Yeah. I'll add a cartoon boing or something like that. Did you guys see the NASA logo on my back though?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I saw it as the catastrophe was happening. Yeah.
Great.
But I will when the episode airs.
Botched launch there, but okay.
Armed robbers steal famous paintings like the Scream and Madonna from the Munch Museum in Oslo, Norway. Way to go, armed robbers, I guess. The Genesis space no, don't steal things. It's not good. The Genesis space probe, another space thing, crash lands in Utah after studying the sun. That's why I did that, because Utah is very special to Dylan and I now. Osama bin Laden releases I don't know why I said that. Osama bin Laden releases a video taking credit for the attacks on September 11th. I said that like very excitedly, and then I was like, let me take that down.
Don't worry. Yeah, you're reporting the news. Like I get like
right.
It's fine. You're not. We know you're not excited about that. You're good.
You're editing anything out.
Yeah.
Edit nothing.
Mozilla, getting the raw cut, everyone. Ugh.
Mozilla releases the Firefox browser. I don't know if you guys use that. I use Chrome mostly.
Yeah, no, I appreciate my time. I don't like to wait.
The Nintendo DS is released in North America.
Yes. Period. Cool. History of 2004. There we go. Who was born in 2004, Chad? Anyone notable? Probably at this point, because now they're what, like 22 years old?
Yeah, I mean a couple slates ago, we threw out like a power couple with Zendaya and Tom Holland, and now this is not like a power couple, but a power friendship in Millie Bobby Brown and Noah Schnapp, some of the two most like delightful people. I've seen so many interviews with them, and they're just so funny together. And of course, they're great on Stranger Things as well. Kit Connor, and if you know anything about left-wing politics, Dean Withers, or like of TikTok. Fame.
Yes, Dean Withers. Very nice. Okay, let's talk about some deaths, Chad. Unfortunately,
we have a few deaths. It happens to everyone. This is interesting. We have Ronald Reagan, but then this is interesting because of a special episode, not just one episode, I think, between the three of us, actually. Marlon Brando passed away. We've discussed him. And, of course, which is kind of insane, he never got to see the movie about himself. Ray Charles passed away in 2004.
Yeah.
Famously.
Yes, very, very big.
He was going to go see it and then passed away.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve. No S at the end. Yasser Arafat. Rick James, bitch. Jerry Orbach. I wasn't saying, okay. Jerry Orbach, Janet Lee, Rodney Dangerfield, Julia Child, Paul Winfield, Peter Ustinov. We threw him an award. Johnny Ramone, Fay Ray, and Elmer Bernstein. Look, we're very silly. We're actually recording this in a morning, and it's very silly. We're waking up.
Listen, we acknowledge those we lost, and we don't. Our laughter is not at their expense.
Right. It's very interesting because as you're naming those, it's weird how time passes, because as you're naming those, I was like, I distinctly remember some of those deaths. Like, distinctly remember them in that I thought they were much more recently. Jerry Orbach was a big one. Law and Order, but also Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And one of the best John Mulaney jokes.
Yeah. And that was crazy. A lot of those where I was just like, oh wow, that happened that year, and that was so long ago, and it felt very recent.
I remember when Christopher Reeve died. I was 6.
Yeah, me too.
I remember that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, me too. And what's weird is that I thought he lived in, paralyzed for much longer, because it was just like 8 years before that or something that he had his
and he kind of got like through it a little bit, and he started to he made like a cameo in Smallville.
Yeah,
and so he was
he was in quite a few episodes of Smallville. Yeah,
career and stuff, and people were wondering if he was going to like continue on, and unfortunately,
he was also in a TV remake of Rear Window.
That's amazing.
Which was
like the
really cool, but not very good.
I'm trying to find out when his accident actually was.
Why would you remake that anyways?
It was sometime between 93 and 96. I know that.
Yeah, it was in the 90s. The documentary about it is amazing. Superman.
Not as important, but very, very sad. I want to add 2 more names to Bert's just because I just noticed them, and because I knew he wouldn't give love to Avatar, so I'm going to do it. Jack Champion, born in 2004.
Of Scream fame.
Spider, that too. Spider, Spider. And then we will talk about this very soon. Moonlight. Alex Hibbert played a young Chiron in that movie, which is also referred to as a little in that movie. So cool. All right, so let's get to some albums. Chad, what are some albums from?
I would like Matt to start with his album.
Yes, of course, Matt. All right. You have some show.
I'm sure I have other 2004 albums. I just didn't really have time to look into exactly which ones came out, but a seminal, very, very important album came out in 2004. And the thing with this one is kids today, I don't think could possibly understand the power of this album. And let me tell you, Chad had alluded to some of it before this, but we had just gotten into a very unpopular war after a national tragedy that was politicized to death, and not being pro-military was seen as unpatriotic, or not being pro-military action, because you can be pro-military without being pro-military action, was not seen as patriotic. And although this would become kind of a staple of the left, everybody was too afraid to say anything, because if people said something, the chicks, which they're now called the chicks, they were called the Dixie Chicks back then, suffered huge for speaking against the president and the war. People were too afraid to say anything. And then Green Day came out with an album that was the first big protest album for that war. It was the first big public denouncement of certain things that our culture had deemed required of a person. American Idiot is one of my favorite albums of all time, and I think it's one of the most important albums that has ever been made for that reason, because I think the world would be a very, very different place if people like Green Day hadn't stood up and said, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. That's what I have is my, this is the 20th anniversary. I do own the original as well.
I was like, that's different.
That's the 20th anniversary one. I love it. Like a hand grenade right there.
Nice. And just to piggyback off of that, it's such a phenomenal album. It's like kind of new punk, where it's like punk as hell, because it's criticizing the government. It's doing things like people weren't doing, like you said, but then it's also like a story.
It's a rock opera,
which is out of it.
Yes, which is incredible. It's a rock opera, which to me was the first thing where I was just like, yes, I was into the political message as well, but to me, I was just like, these songs are all running together, and they keep referencing the other songs in some of the other songs. And I'm like, and I got to the point where I one time, and this was 20 some years ago, so I don't remember exactly, but I remember I was like writing it out, and I like almost like a investigation corkboard or whatever. I had like lines from songs to other songs and stuff like that.
Nice.
It was really cool.
That's amazing. Nice. All right, well, we'll get into the other ones, but yeah, that's definitely one of them. The one that I have listed as number one is probably my favorite album of all time, actually, from my favorite bands. It is Funeral by Arcade Fire. Just like, I read a review once that says, this says everything about life and death that there is to say. And it's just like one of those classic indie albums. And then, of course, I have Green Day's American Idiot. But honestly, I would put those like 1A, 1B. You know, the very important albums, those two. I also love The Killer's Hot Fuss.
Yes.
So then, and then you have, I thought I had this album, but I couldn't find it. I think I do, but I couldn't find it. Good News for People Who Love Bad News by Modest Mouse. And then you have The College Dropout by Kanye West. Let's see, one more over here. And then you have Mad Villainy by Mad Villain. He always wore his Dr. Doom mask. Franz Ferdinand by Franz Ferdinand. Antics by Interpol. Food by MF Doom. The Milk-Eyed Mender by Joanna Newsom. If you love harps, Joanna Newsom. And this kind of rivals. We'll get there when we get to 2010. But like, I feel like these two, like I think Matt was onto something where it's like, 2004 and not 2009, but 2010, like kind of like towards the end of the year, like just great stuff was happening in the 2000s and early 2010s with albums. And it's so cool to have like so many of albums like from a single slate, because it's just a year that like so much great stuff was happening, and some of the best stuff of all time.
Yeah,
because the first two albums at least.
Right.
Yeah.
I would also like to add in Futures by Jimmy Eat World.
Yes,
came out.
I love that album.
Futures, Hot Fuss, and American Idiot were my soundtrack for 2004 or 2005.
Nice.
Nice.
I love Jimmy Eat World. I saw them in concert. That was incredible.
I saw them in concert with
a shirt.
With Green Day for the American Idiot tour.
I should wear my American Idiot shirt. Maybe I'll give breath.
The American Idiot concert was the greatest concert I've ever been to, and Jimmy Eat World opened for them doing their Futures, like on their Futures tour. It was awesome.
We recently, when we saw Green Day in concert, they played all of Dookie, and then they played all of American Idiot. Those are their two best albums. Those are some of the greatest albums ever, and that was probably the greatest concert I've ever seen.
That's that sounds great. Yeah.
Oh, I love hearing y'all nerd out about music, because I was 6, probably listening to like Sesame Street, The Wiggles. No, I was listening to a lot of Disney soundtracks at the time, which transitioned us to what you were saying, Chad. Like so many great movies and music and everything. Let's pay some homage though to the movies that didn't make the cut. Yeah, Chad, do you have anything else to add?
I forgot this is a movie show. Let's go.
Yes.
Talk about movies.
Let's talk though about the 2004 movies that didn't make the cut. We don't have to talk about each one in depth at all. Like, let's just list some titles, but there are plenty of titles that need to be said. So many that when I look at my number, like my 10 film Best Picture slate, like 9 of these movies aren't even part of the Best Picture lineup, but that's just because it was such a strong year, especially for sequels, especially for franchise filmmaking. But then in a little film that Matt had already mentioned, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, my number 2 favorite film of all time.
Yeah.
One of Matt's favorite films of all time. But there are some other films there that came out that year that are amazing and notable. Another one in my top 10 is also this year, which we'll talk to in a sec. But Matt, do you want to list off any films first? We always let our guests go first, even though I never prompt the guests to bring a list, and I always forget. But do you have any off the top of your mind now, or do you want Chad to rattle off some and then you can?
Well, I came prepared with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Period. That's good. Hey, and you know what? That's the best one.
But there were a lot. Like, I was looking at a list. They're not on the top of my head right now because my head's right now in music from 2004. So let's have Chad go, and then I will.
Cool.
I actually have, so normally I do like there's a slate of notable films, and then I have like my these could have been Best Picture worthy list. And I actually have 8 movies on that list. Some might be stretches. I always have ones that I'm like, I don't know.
I've got 9. I've actually got you beat this time. I got 9 because like I said, my Best Picture 10 is 9 movies plus 1 from this slate. So I'm gonna see which one of those 9 is one of those 8 is not.
What a year!
Such a good year. Such a good year.
All right. So we have notable films: Along Came Polly, The Butterfly Effect, The Perfect Score, You Got Served, Barbershop 2, Back in Business. That's a great franchise. 50 First Dates, The Passion of the Christ. That was a pretty big movie. Starsky and Hutch, Agent Cody Banks 2, Destination London. That was the type of shit I was seeing.
Yeah.
Secret Window, Dawn of the Dead, Jersey Girl, Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. That's on Dylan's Best Picture list. Hellboy, Home of the Range, or Home on the Range. Johnson Family Vacation. I saw that in the theater. I didn't see any of these Best Pictures in the theater. Kill Bill Volume 2. The Punisher. Super Size Me. This might actually be on Dylan's Best Picture. Shrek 2. The Day After Tomorrow. Saved! With an exclamation point. My wife loves that movie.
That's a great film.
This was a huge movie for me in the theater, and so many days after the theater. I had it on my little iPod video. I would watch it in homeroom in high school. Napoleon Dynamite. Very important movie to a young Chad. Dodgeball, a true underdog story. Incredibly funny. The Terminal, underrated. Spielberg. Salem's Lot. I'm actually rereading that book. Shout out to Matt's show, where he talks about Stephen King a lot.
There were a few Stephen King movies that year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. White Chicks. The Notebook. Check out Framewreck when we talk White Chicks.
Yeah, I was going to say our Framewreck episode was also 2004, so all those movies as well we can add to this notable film list for sure.
Another really great comedy, Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, I, Robot, The Bourne Supremacy, Garden State, Garden State filmed at Dylan's house,
Yes.
The Village, Collateral, Open Water, Alien vs. Predator, Exorcist: The Beginning, Without a Paddle, saw that in the theater too, Hero, Cellular, Friday Night Lights, the show's better, Team America World Police, The Grudge, Troy, Surviving Christmas, it's another Framewreck, Saw, Seed of Chucky, National Treasure, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Alexander, another Framewreck, House of Flying Daggers, Blade Trinity, Ocean's 12. Dylan already came up with this. Lemony Snicket's, A Series of Fortune Adventure. Maybe that was Matt. Spanglish. Spanglish is actually really good. Hotel Rwanda, Meet the Fockers, and The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Whew, that's a lot of titles. What were your best picture worthy?
Picture worthy are Eternal Sunshine. You guys said that a lot. 13 Going on 30. I know Dylan's got that. Yep, see. Mean Girls. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Hold on. No, it's okay. It's okay. We have to pause.
Okay.
No, that's okay. Mean Girls. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Most would say is the best one. Spider-Man 2. I think it may be the greatest comic book film ever made. That could be a hot take, but it's up there, definitely.
It's up there for me, yeah.
Before Sunset, a movie that changed my life, I think. Was a precursor for me loving horror and loving Edgar Wright. Shaun of the Dead came out this year. And then, Dylan alluded to it. Little 6-year-old Dylan was like, yeah. The Incredibles.
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on most of mine. I'll just say what my best picture worthy are because this is just such a good year. But yeah, my 2 that are in my top 10 of all time, Eternal Sunshine and Before Sunset. I just like suns that year. What can I say? Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, 13 Going on 30, leaving a spot because we're going to talk about one of these 5 movies. And then Kill Bill Volume 2 is in my 10. Then I also have Spider-Man 2, Shrek 2, Incredibles, Mean Girls. Like that is just my such a good lineup. Before I watched one of these movies, 50 First Dates was actually in my top 10 as well because I love that movie. That is very underrated comedy. I really like it. And Along Came Polly, also a very underrated comedy with, and I'll kid you not, I could show you right now, but I don't want to spoil any of my picks, but my supporting actor lineup of 2004, my number 1 is Philip Seymour Hoffman for Along Came Polly.
Along Came Polly I also saw that in the theater.
Me
and
too.
that has one of my
No,
favorite jokes. Well, it's not really a joke, but it's just something that happens in the movie that had me dying laughing in the theater.
I have a story about something. So if it's the same one, let me do that. Well, actually, you can do whatever you want. I have a story about a line in that movie that
It's not a line.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's my thing, and then you do your thing. My thing is just when he's walking on the basketball court or whatever, and he slips and falls. It might not be a basketball court, but he slips and falls.
I think Dylan loves that part too, don't you? You love the basketball part.
I love all of them. Yeah, I mean, every scene he's in is
it.
perfection. It's the best role of any movie that year.
Okay,
in my
I did not see. I said I had seen Along Came Polly in theater. I did not. I was thinking 51st Dates, which I did see in theater, which I also really loved. It was like a resurgence for me for Sandler for a bit. But I saw Along Came Polly at home with my sister, and it's not a very good movie, and I'll just say that. I've rewatched it recently. It's as a film, it's not great. As moments through that film are iconic, though.
Yeah.
Basically, you're right. Everything with Philip Seymour Hoffman is incredible. I'm a huge Philip Seymour Hoffman fan, so like everything with him in it. But this movie may not have created this word, but it definitely put it in the zeitgeist. But it was the first time my sister and I had ever heard this word. Yeah. And there's a point where Philip Seymour Hoffman goes up to Ben Stiller and says, "We have to leave." I just sharded. And it clicked to me. He goes on to explain it, which he would have to back then because not everybody understands. We had never heard this word, my sister and I. But before he explained it, it clicked and we died. We had to pause the movie so we could stop laughing. We rewound it to hear it again. We died again. And it's it's a memory that I have with my sister that will never go away because we spent a lot of time laughing until we couldn't breathe. That was one of the biggest moments of our history of us just dying because we'd never heard that word. And as soon as he said it, we knew exactly what he meant. And oh my god.
Yeah. And it's the delivery too of like he clearly has shit in his pants, so he's also trying not to like move any muscles, so he's trying to also be quiet about it. So he's like,
and I'm pretty sure he's wearing like a white suit too.
Yeah, he's like, I just sharded. It's so good. I love it. Oh, and Jesus Christ Superstar, where he's doing the pose. Oh, so good.
I love hearing those personal stories about like a connection with you and your sister, where it's just that specific moment you're just dying laughing. Because I have similar things with my sister, where we listen to certain songs and just something will hit, and then you're just both laughing together. That's a great story.
I love that.
Yeah. I do have some now that I would like to mention for 2004.
Nice.
On my best picture list, Eternal Sunshine would be on the list, and if I were voting, it would win. The other movie that I would put on the best picture list, which is might be interesting for some people, and you can watch us talk about it on
Catwoman.
Yeah, Catwoman. No, which we haven't. We've announced it because it's aired by this point.
Yeah.
You can hear Dylan, Carly, and I talk about The Village on there because I would have personally put it in the best picture slate. Three of them that are on this slate, I would have included in the best picture slate. But I also want to mention a couple other movies that I really love from that year. Mysterious Skin, which is a very unknown, underseen Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie. It's very hard to watch.
Yeah.
But I think that people should watch it. It's just very difficult to watch. Hidalgo was
Viggo Mortensen.
Viggo Mortensen's follow up to Lord of the Rings. It's just fun to see him in the movie. Is really it. I Heart Huckabees, which has had some controversy since then, but back then I really liked that movie. The Machinist with Christian Bale, where he lost all that weight before. Like it was The Machinist where he was skeletal, and his very next movie was Batman Begins.
How?
Yeah. Actually, I would probably put that over The Village in my Best Picture list because I think that is a thing. Alexander, be reasonable. Which you could hear us talk about on Framewreck. I also really like Ladder 49, which is I just really enjoyed that movie. It's not a fantastic movie, but a movie about firefighters with Joaquin Phoenix. This was after Signs, but before Walk the Line. House of Flying Dragons Hot Flying Daggers. Did you guys talk about that? I think you mentioned it. Yeah. I really like that movie as well. There was another one. Oh, there's some Stephen King movies that came out this year. Also Secret Window and Riding the Bullet are both Stephen King adaptations, which you will eventually be able to hear us talk about on my show Screen King on Matty Loves Movies. And Fahrenheit 9/11 came out this year. Famously was not nominated for Best Documentary because they put all their campaigning into campaigning for Best Picture.
Yeah.
And that was also a combined with this was the first big criticism of the Bush campaign in post 9/11.
Yeah.
Was Fahrenheit 9/11. Marry that with American Idiot and a lot of the stuff that was happening that year really reshaped politics in our country for better and for worse, unfortunately. But I wanted to mention that as well. Phantom of the Opera, which is not wonderful, but I enjoy it. There was one more, but I forgot. Oh, there's a movie called Final Cut with Robin Williams, which is not a comedy. It's a drama, but it's about a guy who everybody in the world, their whole life is recorded through their eyes. Like when they die, you can extract their all of their memories, and he is in charge of editing those into something like for their funeral or whatever, or for you just an aspect of what their life was like, and then it becomes like this thriller that whatever it was. I enjoyed it, and then Kill Bill Volume 2, and now that I've mentioned that, would be on my Best Picture list. Probably above some of these, a couple of these as well. So
just so many good films. 2004. Yeah, it is just such a heavy year.
Kill Bill Volume 2 is my favorite of the two. Also,
I don't know what I prefer of the two. Probably one, but they're just so good, and I love them together as well.
I like talkie movies, and that one's the talkie one.
Yeah. Cool. Do we have anything else on the year 2004 before we go into the Oscars of 2004? Cool. Let's just talk about it because I did briefly allude to it, but the $1 Million Baby, huge upset on the day. I was looking at the betting odds. You were going to make a lot of money if you bet on $1 Million Baby because The Aviator was a heavy favorite going in. But people were still predicting, some people, $1 Million Baby upset only because of one word, and that's the big M word. That's momentum. We see this a lot with the Oscars, but The Aviator started off super strong this season. Wins. The first win actually went Critics' Choice for Sideways, but then The Aviator went on to win Globes, BAFTA, and PGA. But the thing is, $1 Million Baby, the thing it had on its side was that it had come out so late. It was a film that was released, I believe, in December in limited release, wide release in 2005. So it kind of had like a little bit of a qualification window, but really it kind of took off and became a word of mouth hit, box office hit, as the Oscar nominations were coming out, as all these award ceremonies were happening. So it really just goes to show sometimes strategy of when you release a film will really aid in your Oscar campaign, because this is a movie that just more people were seeing. It was the hottest thing. Reminds me a little of Titanic, not quite the legs, but the idea of like it came out at the right time and just was such a phenomenon pop culture wise. While these older films, which were all released in like October, November, December, they were still recent releases, but they had almost gotten tired of it because the big narrative this year was Martin Scorsese's finally going to win his overdue Oscar, including his Best Picture win, at least Best Director. But then on the day, Sideways and Eternal Sunshine won Screenplay, so everyone was like, oh, okay, maybe it's not going to go how we think, and then Million Dollar Baby wins 2 acting prizes plus director, and then it was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's going to win Best Picture, and then it did. And that was not even a BAFTA nominee. So this is one of those rare years where a film doesn't win any precursors and still wins Best Picture, which is why we could have probably put it in our year of the upset as well. But we just had only so many to choose from. But really, really cool story for Million Dollar Baby there. Matt, you are muted. I know you're trying to talk. But
when you said momentum, the M word was momentum. Thought the M word was makushla.
That too.
There is one more thing, one more aspect that I think helped it, but I will talk about that when we talk about Million Dollar Baby. There's a cultural thing that was going on.
So. Yeah, because this is clearly a huge, if you just look at the chart, the objective facts, like a huge come from behind win. But I also think in the moment, you can probably attest this when we get to Million Dollar Baby, there was probably a little bit more. It had more chances than this chart leads us to believe. But a few other just Oscar tidbits, just because we like to bring it up, and then I promise we'll get to the movies. But I just love chatting about 2004, especially because we all have such personal experiences and ties to the films and moments of that year. But a lot of cool kind of like tidbits and facts of this ceremony itself. Mostly in regards to just like records that were made and just different groundbreaking pieces of history. Let me just get it up here. Perfect. So Martin Scorsese, by not winning Best Director, joins Robert Altman, Clarence Brown, Alfred Hitchcock, and King Vidor as the most nominated individuals for Best Director without a win. That would be remedied 2 years after. So clearly his time was coming, and we'll talk about that when we get to The Aviator, but like people really wanted to give him the win. It's just it was not lining up. It finally happened. He couldn't do it against Return of the King, couldn't do it against Million Dollar Baby, but he could do it in 2 years following. But the winner for Best Director, Clint Eastwood, actually becomes the oldest Best Director winner in history at the time.
Wow.
I don't know if that's been passed. I don't think it's been passed. But at the age of 74, becomes the oldest winner. I don't believe that has been topped. Jamie Foxx becomes the 3rd actor and 10th individual to be nominated for 2 acting nominations in the same year, because he's nominated for Ray and for Collateral, and he wins for Ray. Some might say it's a joint win to award his just year of cinema. But also that performance on its own, I think, would have won regardless. But
he's also really great in Collateral.
Yes, and that's the thing.
Really
yes, which is actually interesting because of all the 4 acting categories, that acting category actually also had an upset. Thomas Hayden Church was the predicted winner; he was the front runner, and Morgan Freeman ends up winning his first Oscar for this one, which
that's deserved, though.
Yeah, I think I was surprised that this was his first one, and I was thinking back when I was watching Shawshank for Matt's show a little while ago. I was like, wait. Did Morgan Freeman ever win an Oscar? And he did. He did one for this, but it was almost kind of like, whoa, I'm surprised it took this long for it to happen.
And Million Dollar Baby has very Shawshank vibes to it with that narration.
Yeah. And then Cate Blanchett becomes the first performer to win an Academy Award for playing another Academy Award winner, because she plays Katharine Hepburn, which is a really cool distinction. Again, one that I don't know if it's been repeated. I'm sure it has. I can't remember. Especially with all these biopics, I'm sure like there was a song nominee or something that like maybe not like Leonard Bernstein, for example, but like I bet there have been other performances that have been awarded to Oscar winners. Maybe not. Maybe that's the only one. Katharine Hepburn being played by
Judy Garland never won an Oscar, right?
No, she didn't. I'm trying to think of it. Maybe that's a piece of history for next time. I'll bring. See if I can find another performance that won for playing another Academy Award winner. But
a fun thing about Clint Eastwood's win, and I commented on this in the moment, and I thought it was really funny when it was happening while I was watching, is that he became the oldest person to ever win the director's award. But during his speech for Best Director, he points out to the audience and says, "I brought my mom today, and she stood up, and his mother was still alive." Him, the oldest nominee ever, which was just his way of saying, "I'm never going to die."
And so far, so good, Still making movies. Juror number 2 last year. Yeah.
Hang in there, Blondie.
Yeah. Perfect. Do we have anything else to add on the ceremony? Anything else about the year before we transition into these 5 nominees?
I
Anything
didn't
else,
get a
Matt?
chance to rewatch the ceremony. I remember it vaguely as it was happening. I think the anecdote I have about Martin Scorsese was the next year when 3-6 Mafia won for best song for Hustle and Flow. Uh, Jon Stewart, who was the host that year, came out and said 3-6 Mafia 1, Scorsese 0.
Wow, that's funny.
But the next year he would win. And the other thing is, like, the year before was such a big year for the Oscars, not only because of the Return of the King thing, and it felt like this just celebration of this series that had happened, but also Billy Crystal had returned the year before and gave one of his best hosting jobs, because he's an all-timer Oscar host, and he just gave this incredible hosting job the year before. So this one had a lot to live up to. Chris Rock was the host, which we've seen what happens when Chris Rock is on the Oscar stage. But he was good, I remember, but it didn't quite live up to the year before. But I remember enjoying that Oscar ceremony.
Nice. Last thing I'll say, I did fact check, and she remains the only person to play an Oscar winner in a film to get the win, which is really cool. So Cate Blanchett wins for playing Katharine Hepburn. It has never been repeated since, unless Aunt Gladys was in some movies in the 60s, and I don't know about it. But all right, let us now transition finally into the talking about this film. I love a long preamble because there's just such amazing stories to come of it. This is a year with so many amazing movies on the cutting room floor, and we only have 5 movies to talk about, so we don't have to worry about getting through 10 of these. But we have 5 big movies to talk about, starting with probably the biggest in terms of scope, scale, spectacle, and budget, and maybe even, at the time, prestige. Let us talk about Martin Scorsese's The Aviator. Chad, tell us.
Show me the blueprint. Show me the blueprint. Show me the blueprints. Show me all of the blueprints. The Aviator, directed by, I could have kept saying it, directed by Martin Scorsese, written by John Logan, cinematography by Robert Richardson, music by Howard Shore, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Cate Blanchett, Kate Beckinsale, John C. Reilly, Alec Baldwin, Alan Alda, Ian Holm, Danny Houston, Gwen Stefani, Jude Law, Adam Scott, Matt Ross, Data himself, Brent Spiner, and Willem Dafoe. Synopsis: the life of an eccentric pilot and entrepreneur who develops a severe form of obsessive-compulsive disorder and germophobia, based on the 1993 novel Howard Hughes' The Secret Life by Charles Higham.
Yes. Cate Blanchett wins for playing Katharine Hepburn, and while you were doing the preamble, I was like, wait, Gary Oldman for Mank, and I was like, he didn't win, because there's probably other nominees, but I'm just trying to think. Now I'm in this mission to find all the actors who have played Oscar winners, because it's very rare. I mean, the Oscars are only less than 100 years old at this point, so yeah, The Aviator. Matt, you kind of alluded to this at the time, you not loving this one, because you had said when you watched your triple feature, you were like, I didn't love it, but I was like, yeah, that's totally gonna win. A lot of people shared that sentiment just because, again, we talked about Scorsese had never won. It was the overdue narrative. Gangs of New York was never going to win against Chicago. I almost said Peter Jackson. I think I said Peter Jackson earlier. I meant Chicago that year. But again, it was not going to win that year. And this was kind of the year where everyone was like, all right, this is his time. And he had done a movie that was in production for so long. This is a movie that so many filmmakers wanted to make, had tried to make, had actors slated to make. This is a movie that everyone wanted their hands on this movie because, I mean, it is an interesting biopic because you're making a movie about Hollywood, about a filmmaker, but also you have this angle of him being an aviator that adds just so much more interesting subject matter to play with as a director too, and build these big elaborate plane sets and just have these great flying sequences, and it's really interesting that this did kind of take so many different forms before it was released, because it was originally supposed to be Warren Beatty who was going to direct it and star in it in the 70s, and then things kind of got rewritten and rechanged. And then 1990 Steven Spielberg was attached to do it, and then later on Brian De Palma was supposed to do it with Nicolas Cage as the Aviator himself. And then, we kind of settled on this version. There was a version where Johnny Depp was supposed to play the role, then Milos Forman came in, Edward Norton was supposed to play the role, William Friedkin then came in, and then Norman Jewison kind of had his hat in the ring. Yeah, I know, so many names from so many different eras. And then finally, when Christopher Nolan said he wanted to come in and do it with John Travolta in the role, they said, period, let's do it. And then Scorsese said, nope, I want to do it. And they said, great. Shelved all the other versions and said, okay, yep, Scorsese, you can do it. Nolan wanted Jim Carrey. It was Norman Jewison who wanted John Travolta. So we have all these different pairings and things. We've had so many different options for actors who could have done this. Jim Carrey, Edward Norton, John Travolta, and then you have directors Steven Spielberg, Christopher Nolan, some of the biggest names of all time. But Martin Scorsese is the one who got it done. After Michael Mann had been hired to direct it with Leonardo DiCaprio, but then Martin Scorsese said, I'll just direct it myself. So that is the journey of how we get to The Aviator and how we get this particular duo. So DiCaprio was on before Scorsese was on, which is the craziest part.
I will say, I think this is the best pairing out of everything you've.
Interesting.
That is the opposite of what I was about to say.
Interesting.
Because I think that this formed a really great partnership between director and actor, which went on to be incredible.
Yeah, because before this, he had only worked with him on Gangs of New York, and even then, I think that was 2 years prior, so they were probably already in development for this, because I think in 1999, they had officially been like, okay, it's Michael Mann directing, DiCaprio in it, Scorsese's producing, and Scorsese was like, I want to direct this, I have passion for this, which is so cool.
You're telling me I could have gotten a Milos Forman version of this, or a Norman Jewison version of this,
or a Nolan version, which
Nolan
I think
with
now
Jim
would be
Carrey,
really cool.
That would have been incredible.
Yeah, but again, everything happens for a reason, and I will say, despite me wanting to see all those different versions, I'm with both of you. I think all those versions sound so cool, and also like, who's to say you can't just make this movie with other people too? Like, they can retell the story in a different angle. This doesn't have to be the only biopic about this guy. But then I agree with Chad, where I think it is such a good pairing, and I think Scorsese makes a lot of sense to direct a movie like this, considering what Scorsese's whole mantra as a filmmaker is, what he brings to his skill set, and what he's passionate about, because he loves film history. I mean, we talked about it with Hugo too. He just loves film history, and also just Leo. Give or take, those other actors are amazing, but I also agree. I think Leo is fantastic in this. So I do think this is kind of a great marriage, even though I would have also loved to see the other options. So I'm in the middle.
I can see like Jim Carrey doing like some of the, things where he's like, doing the plane stuff and whatnot. I don't see Jim Carrey. I don't know. It's hard to say because he is he has done method before and stuff. So he has gone to the depths and stuff, but I just don't see him doing this as well. The same obsessive compulsive crazy that Leo goes to, and we know he can go there, especially when Scorsese's behind the camera.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard someone say that they don't think Jim Carrey can play crazy. But no, that's a good point.
I'm talking about on that level.
I actually
he would take it to a funny level. I think.
Maybe
that's the part I think he actually would have been incredible at. I've seen have you ever seen the movie number 23?
Yeah, but I don't think that was very good.
Oh, it's a bad movie. But he is good at doing that.
Well, and this is what's
with the same level, but I could be wrong. We just
I don't know.
This is why you have to let the Picture This guys and our guest Matty Fresh sit behind a table and cast it ourselves. Give us the power, because Chad and I have pitched great sequels on the show. Matt and I on Framewreck have pitched better versions of the bad movies we watch. Let us do it, guys. We've seen this now. We now know how to make this better.
Here's the best pairing I could say of all of those things you said. Reteam Man on the Moon group. Milos Forman and Jim Carrey, I think that would have been the optimal version of this movie.
Maybe. Yeah, because also, what does Jim Carrey do in a Nolan setting, too? Because does Nolan let him be funny at all? Does he rip all the charisma from him, too? That's the question.
He doesn't even... The other movie he was in this year, or the other movie, he was in two other movies. Sunshine. One was Wacky with...
Lemony Snicket,
Lemony Snicket. And one, he was very subdued. Even in the comedy bits, he was extremely subdued. Yeah. And so we know he can play not comedic. He's one of those versatile actors ever in terms of that. So I don't know. For me, Man on the Moon is such a good biopic because it covers a lot of ground without feeling episodic.
Mm-hmm.
This movie felt so episodic. And that's one of my big things with it, is that I never really feel a connection from thing to thing. It just feels like a bunch of vignettes.
I feel that
about this character, which is fine. A movie doesn't have to have a perfect narrative or a perfect a seamless follow through, especially when you're dealing with that much time. I just think that that's one of the things that disconnects me, is that like I never feel like one scene enhances the next scene.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my big issue. And I'll say, I still didn't love this movie. I appreciate it on a lot of levels. I think that each individual scene is great. I think that the Errol Flynn scene was really good, like a really great scene, but it informs almost nothing about the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about basically every scene in this movie. Sorry. We were casting this movie.
No. The casting thing is just interesting history. But again, like, this is the movie we got, and this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Again, Jim Carrey, he's already done The Moon, Man on the Moon. He's already done Eternal Sunshine. Like the Aviator only flies close to the moon. Planes don't go up to space, Matt. So Jim Carrey's already up there. We got to let Leo take
he's been further with the Eternal
atmosphere.
Sunshine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
he's eternally up there.
I think it's just interesting to like look at this and like Leo's career and stuff too. It's just like going from like, you know, he was always trying to, because I know like the famous story with him and James Cameron where he's like, I gotta be like a guy with a problem and stuff. And then James Cameron's like, that's easy, just to have an affliction. It's like, what about playing a guy that doesn't have the affliction? And that's even harder if you think about it. So, you know, that clicked for him, and then he was great as Jack in Titanic.
But also still wanting to like strip himself of the heartthrob after this and like take on a little bit different roles, and that's where you get this Gangs of New York, Catch Me If You Can. Yeah. This
is like the beginning, of that like rise of like, you know, he can be that like leading man that's not a heartthrob, that has an issue, but also, you know, can, you know, tackle being this like eccentric, you know, guy that also has like a lot of problems in his life. And I just feel like, you know, Scorsese letting Leo go to like the extremes here. That's why I think it's like the best pairing, is just because while I definitely agree with Matt that I think like, you know, it sometimes doesn't feel like there's a lot of connective tissue between the scenes, but the scenes themselves are often really great, especially like when you look at like the color and the set design and stuff that he uses, I think is really, really interesting. But then going through, and you can kind of see him like progressively getting worse with his OCD and his germophobia. And I don't know if like they could have gone further with that, but he goes pretty far in that he's just like constantly repeating things over and over and over. And I think that's what's really interesting about the movie, is just how he kind of devolves into that. And then you have that sequence that I did not think was going to happen. I didn't know anything about Howard Hughes' life, apparently, because I was just like, he gets in like this crazy plane wreck that almost burns to death. Like, what is going on? This is crazy. So, yeah, the movie has a lot of interesting stuff in it. But I think, like, you know, with my big negative, and then you guys can go off of this if you agree or disagree. My big negative about just Scorsese and like Thelma, the editor, just in general, it just feels like they're like, look, Scorsese is an epic filmmaker, is one of the best filmmakers of all time. And he goes, it's not a good movie if it's not at least 2 hours and 45 minutes or 3 hours long. And then I'm like, guys, you can trim some of this stuff out. You don't need to include everything. And that's why when people go like Thelma's like one of the greatest editors of all time, I'm like, is she? Like everything has to be 3 hours long for it to be a great movie? Like I'm sure there's some stuff you can cut out. And here I think is one of like the prime examples of, I don't know if we needed everything in this movie. Not as long as some of his movies. Killers of the Flower Moon's like an hour longer than this.
Yeah.
But you know, still I think
you like the editing in that.
I think it's an hour better, but
I think that movie adds to the pacing of that movie is purposeful.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I think that's where like I agree and I disagree, because it's like, yes, all his movies are long, and sometimes in this sense, yeah, sometimes it's a little over long, and sometimes the scenes overstay their welcome and stuff. But it's also like, but Killers of the Flower Moon is his longest movie, and it's his best paced movie, one of his best paced movies. So it's really not, and I stand by. I think she is the greatest editor. But again, like I understand, because it's also like, yeah, it's still 3 hours, but what was the grand total of footage? Was it 10 hours? Was it 20 hours that you cut down to 3? Was it 4 hours that you cut down to 3? Was it 3 hours that you left in its entirety? I think that's also where we don't necessarily know. And editing is not only the scenes, how they flow into one another and the overall runtime, but also in the scenes themselves. Like that crash sequence is so good because of the editing, because of how the cuts are made, when it's cut, how it's
Right.
cut. But I agree with you. Like I do think in this sense, it's not her best editing job, which is interesting because a lot of people online think this is the peak of her editing for Scorsese,
Never.
which is interesting.
My thing with her and with Scorsese in general is, I generally don't mind. In fact, with two exceptions, I think his movies are perfect lengths. I think that longer is fine because he's telling a story that requires this time frame. I think there are two movies of his that I think are too long because it could have been cut down by a lot. And that is this one. And I'm sorry, Dylan.
I won't get
The
mad.
Irishman.
Say it. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, The Irishman.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. All right.
Those are the only two. I think the rest of his movies, like you said, Killers of the Flower Moon, so perfectly paced. It does not feel like an almost 4-hour movie.
Yeah. And Goodfellas is longer than this, I believe, too. Yeah.
Goodfellas is long too, and it also doesn't feel that long. This one feels as long as it is, and might feel longer than it is. And I think a lot of that. And here's my big thing, and I don't blame her at all for this. I think for better or worse, the reason she's one of the best editors, and some would say the best editor of all time, is because he probably gives her a Howard Hughes amount of footage that she makes into something palatable. He's a great director,
but he doesn't know restraint. Yeah,
he does not have any restraint. I think I think if anything works in this movie, it's that a director with no restraint made a movie about a director with no restraint.
Yeah. I was about to say that Martin Scorsese's kind of the Howard Hughes.
Yeah.
It's
So I think
so crazy.
I think that the fact that she ever makes palatable movies out of what he gives her is probably the reason she's the greatest of all time.
Fair.
For this, I think that there was too much of a focus on the long form. I think if you had honestly, and this kind of sucks, but if you had removed the Hell's Angels stuff and removed the Senate stuff, you probably would have had a really great cohesive movie that could have fleshed out a little bit there. If you got the Kate Hepburn stuff all the way through the OCD, breakdown thing, that's all very interesting and should have been fleshed out more. The problem is you've got this beginning and end thing that don't really connect with the rest of it. And trust me, those scenes are incredible. His speech in the Senate is so good.
Yeah.
I just don't feel a connection to the rest of the film. And that's one of my big problems with it. I'll also say, and this is just a side thing, I've been rewatching The West Wing, and in season 6 and 7, Alan Alda plays a senator, and which is basically the opposite of the senator he played in this movie. And so the whole time I'm thinking Vinnick would never. But that's neither here nor there. Sorry, go on.
No, I mean, Dylan, I don't think you've really talked about the movie that much.
No, I mean, I just like listening to it because I agree and I disagree with a lot of it. I'm higher on this than both of you for sure.
Okay.
Just because also I love Scorsese movies, and I do think the length here, it's kind of what you said, Matt, where I'm like, I really don't know how much was there to cut down. And I think the fact that there is a movie at all is kind of a testament to how good she is. And I think that's why he wins director for The Departed, not just because he's overdue, but because the scenes themselves have a kinetic energy with a direction that don't always need to be aided by the edit, whereas a lot of his films, like you said, are aided by the edit. The edit is what essentially how the film comes together, and that's where I see the pros and cons, because I do agree this is too long, and there are scenes that drag, and there are moments that drag, like the whole part where he's like in the middle of his private theater and just going crazy, like some of that stuff probably could have been cut down. But again, I think the individual scenes themselves are so interesting because, like what Chad said, I didn't know anything about this guy. And it's crazy because he's one of the most prolific, influential, richest, most monumental people in cinema. And I think that's where I am really invested because I just love when a director who clearly loves this art form, and we saw this with Hugo as well, just like pours all their heart and soul. It feels like a love letter to cinema in a way, and that's what I always love about it is or always, I've only seen this once, but that's what I love about it is that Martin Scorsese is clearly so passionate, loves this art form, clearly loves just making things that they're bigger and grander than ever because this is his biggest film by far, still his biggest film, I would say. Hugo had a lot of effects, but I think in just grand spectacle and scale, this is his biggest film to date, will probably never be topped. And I think it's just so cool to see one of our masters at the craft getting to do a biopic that everyone sought after, everyone wanted to make, and he finally made it and made it as grand and as big as possible and as lavish as possible. I just think it's him at his peak creatively for aesthetic purposes, but I agree, like the storytelling itself is not at its strongest. But again, he didn't write the script. I don't think he's to blame for it necessarily. The script itself is fine. It's just I do agree it goes too long. But also, when you have Cate Blanchett playing Katharine Hepburn at the center of a lot of these scenes, I could watch that for 5 hours, just because she is so magnetic. And it's impressive because I'm glad we're watching this later in our Picture This watching than earlier because we've seen now so many Katharine Hepburn. I almost said Kate Hepburn. Maybe she went by Kate. I don't know. But
I said Kate earlier because they call her Kate.
Yeah. But like Kate Hepburn movies, we've seen so many now that we now understand who she was and her style, but we don't know much about her. And I think Cate Blanchett just adds another layer to her as a person that we've never seen, but also just gets the mannerisms so perfectly. Sometimes I don't love when actors are just trying to like mimic other performances. It's like, well, what is your own artistic, voice coming to this? And I think she does a good job bringing the voice to this while also getting all the mannerisms perfectly. It's it's not an SNL sketch. You're not just mimicking. You are actually becoming this character. And yeah, it's kind of cool that she's like essentially what a lot of people would say is our best working current living actress right now. Her or Meryl Streep, probably, at least by accolades, is playing now one of the greatest, if not the greatest actress who ever lived. I think that's just a really cool, like, kind of turning point where, like, 20, 30 years from now, when, like, this movie fits in the midpoint of, like, the first Academy Awards and the 150th or whatever, like, it's going to be cool to see, like, this was the diverging point where, Katharine Hepburn and Cate Blanchett, the two greatest actresses of all time, kind of met in the middle. And I just think that's a really cool element of it.
I find that interesting that you say that because when I was watching the movie, I kind of got the impression that she was doing like a Katharine Hepburn caricature. Like she had just watched a Katharine Hepburn movie and said, I'm going to do that, but didn't get to like the core of the actress. Although I've never really seen Katharine Hepburn outside of the movies. Right. So maybe that's just actually how she presented herself to the world when she was out in the real world. Because that's
my understanding
vibe from it.
My understanding about Katharine Hepburn is that she was subdued in her roles. That she was a bigger character than she was on screen. That's my understanding. Which actually brings me to the thing is that you were saying you were glad you watched it later so you could have it over here. I feel the same way. Because like the Howard Hughes thing is, I didn't know anything about Howard Hughes when I went into this, but I now have 22 years on you guys of knowing about Howard Hughes, because back then I felt the same way. Now I know a lot more about him, but that's just because I saw this movie back then. But it was the same thing. Katharine Hepburn, I had not seen nearly enough Katharine Hepburn movies. So when I saw this movie, and everybody was like, oh, this is a great performance. I knew she was going to win, but I was like, that was way too over the top. Now that I've seen a lot more Katharine Hepburn movies, I'm like, and I know a little bit more about her. It's a great performance. Although while watching it, I was like, I see why this annoyed me. But I also see why it's a great performance, which I did not recognize back then.
Yeah.
I did want to touch on, like, because I think we've already like said a lot about it, but I remember because I started watching this movie like a long time ago, and I was like, I've never seen The Aviator. Let's check it out. I need to watch more Scorsese movies that aren't just mob movies because he has a lot that aren't mob movies. And and Hugo, my favorite Martin Scorsese movie, as Dylan has brought up a lot of times, is like 2 hours and 6 minutes, and it's maybe his best movie. Come at me in the comments. but yeah, just wanted to throw that shot out there.
Yeah, no, it's not a bold take. That's the thing. Like, I think most people will kind of resort around like, oh, it's Taxi Driver or Goodfellas, but I really think the breadth of his filmography is so wide that like if you're saying it's After Hours, if you're saying it's Killers of the Flower Moon, if you're saying it's The Aviator, like I get it, like I get why. And that's the thing, I think each film is different enough that it can appeal to different people. But for me, it's The Irishman, and that's the one that Matt doesn't love. So like that's the thing, like it's very interesting.
Somebody in the corner's like, I love Mean Streets.
Yeah, and honestly, yeah, probably. I mean, it's on a Criterion. There must be someone.
After Hours is a great film too, by the way, and also shorter than his normal films. So
the just kind of like the through line of it. Like I love the character stuff that they're doing with Leo. I think that's my favorite part. Is when he starts to kind of devolve into that thing. He's not getting everything he wants, and like he's so eccentric and so what is the word? You think big.
I think biggerish.
No one's coming up with it. It's fine.
Not think biggerish.
Wide-eyed. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. You're thinking
overzealous, over-eager.
Starts with an A. Anyway,
aspirational.
No. Anyway, sorry. You're thinking big.
I think biggerish is close to what you were thinking.
And it's not coming to you the way you want, but I mean you're rich as hell and everything like that. But I love the character stuff they're doing with like the OCD and stuff like that. I didn't realize he had OCD until like a third of the way through it, and I was like, that's why he's saying things over and over and over like that. I didn't know what the hell was going on, and then he started to really devolve into it. Yeah,
come in with the milk.
The milk, the set design, all that stuff is great, but like I guess I just didn't really. And this is sometimes true with biopics. I just didn't really care about all the plane stuff and like what he wanted and just like the through line of that. It just didn't really like hit for me. Whereas we'll talk about like another film, a musical film we'll talk about that I think worked a little bit better as far as like what the people wanted and stuff and like what they were doing. Where I was like, I don't really care about. He's like, we need to do all this so we can, defeat the other airline and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't really care.
Well, that's actually my biggest knock against it too is that I just don't care about planes enough. And but that's not to say a movie can't get you interested in something that you're not as interested in. We'll talk about Maverick. Yeah, that, but I don't think that's a movie about like how planes are so cool necessarily. True. I think the planes are cool because the movie's cool, but I'm thinking more so another film in the slate talking about like maybe something or a culture or a specific hobby that is not as, like I am not as well versed in, but I'm interested in because of the film. Whereas this one, like I'm not as into planes, and this made me interested in like elements of planes, but it's just one of those things. Like I don't love racing movies because I'm not the biggest Cars guy, but again there are some Cars movies like Cars itself that are pretty good.
And I know that it's like called The Aviator, so they really wanted to focus on the flying stuff because that was like his prominent thing. The filmmaking was like kind of on the side, but I kind of would like have wanted more of like Scorsese talking about his film career, although he only really made like 2 films. Overall, like from directing point. So
it was more of a producer.
Can't really make that your centerpiece of the film, but I don't know. I guess that would have been a little bit more interesting, but that's just me.
But I also think it's cool that there is something else besides just movie making, because there's so many movies about people making movies about filmmakers and movies about Hollywood where it's all Hollywood. It's cool that this aviation stuff is an element of it, because while it's not the most interesting thing from you and I, Chad, but it's like it's a cool little extra thing that like no other Hollywood movies about Hollywood filmmakers has this plane angle. So it's a cool thing to add, especially technologically speaking. But
but I think like that's just like where, because I had started the movie a long time ago, got maybe like 30 minutes into or 45 minutes into it, and it was just like, this is the most boring movie I've ever seen. And I just couldn't continue. I just was I had to go watch something else. And then having to finish it and watch the rest of the movie and watch it all the way through for this, it got more interesting as we go on, because we started getting more into his character stuff and his quirks and things like that. That really starts to interest me a lot more when you let Leo cook with the character stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is getting kind of nuts.
Yeah. Great. Matt, anything else?
I think that a Howard Hughes biopic is a no-brainer. He's a pioneer in 2 different fields, and 2 different, very different fields. aviation and filmmaking. Yeah, he didn't direct a lot of movies. He was more of a producer. But Hell's Angels, whether they really downplayed how well received that movie was, because like when it was over, it did that like smattering of clapping thing that signifies people didn't like a movie. But its use of color and sound are some of our benchmarks in film history. So it's really interesting that he was such a pioneer in both things. I wish the scope had been a little bit smaller so that it could have been a more interesting film for me.
Quick thing before we end it. What, as far as like Scorsese films, is this S tier, A tier, or B tier? I don't think it's less than B tier. I would say.
I would say it's probably a B tier for me, just because it's like it's also not as like I feel like despite it getting so many nominations and the most wins on the day and being the best picture frontrunner until the very day, I still don't think people talk about it as much as some of the others. And maybe it's because his Oscar winning one would come right after, and then his most notable stuff happened in the decades prior. But I feel like this one has almost been kind of underrated, maybe not underrated, but under talked about, underappreciated with time maybe.
I would put it probably B tier. It's one of my least favorite of Scorsese's movies, just in general. Which is interesting. I love old Hollywood stories, but my least favorite movies from Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino are his old Hollywood movie. Or what among my least favorite. It's not, neither of them are my least favorite, but it's just interesting.
Very nice. I will also bring up one thing because this did pop into the private chat. I wasn't sure if anyone was gonna like segue to bring it in, but I'll just bring it in. Bo Burnham's inside is different than I remember. Coming with the milk. Matt posted that in the Discord the other day, which was hilarious.
And we'll get there. But there's a certain movie I watched in the slate that was making me on the verge of tears, and then Matt came in clutch at the very moment I needed it with this gift and comment that made me laugh so hard.
Yeah, should we just keep this up here for the rest of our discussion? No. We can talk about Finding Neverland with this guy. I mean, his Peter's put away, but
did you put Johnny Depp's face over
it? All right. I don't want to kick you from the studio. I'm trying to get it out of the stage, but I'll leave it in. It doesn't matter. There it is. It went away. It's a little behind the scenes. But yeah, The Aviator. I almost said Finding Neverland. That's our next one. Whoops. The Aviator, nominated for 11, the most on the day, and wins 5, the most of the day. Supporting actress for Cate Blanchett, it wins. It wins also for art direction, cinematography, costume design, and film editing. So Thelma gets her second of 3 there. She would win again 2 years later for The Departed. This film also got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Martin Scorsese, Best Actor for Leonardo DiCaprio, Best Supporting Actor for Alan Alda, doing his best Howard Stern impression, Original Screenplay, and Best Sound Mixing. That was not a that was not a bad thing. I think it's a great voice and it's a great performance. But this plane sadly has to land. But what never lands? Let's talk about.
Oh my God, that's your best one.
Thank you. Wow, best.
Maybe not. Maybe
I gotta up
it's
the
just
ante.
I loved it very much.
Yeah, you could say that was $1 million segue. Shoot, too early. All right, let's talk about Finding Neverland.
Hold on. I forgot to mention about The Aviator that when they are on the red carpet, with him and Gwen Stefani. Which I think this was like her first movie role, and her husband's first movie role, Gavin Rossdale, was in Constantine the very next year. Anyway, when they're on the red carpet, they call his movie The $4 Million Baby, which I thought was pretty funny.
There you go. Perfect segues for a film coming up soon. I'll remember that when I make my next segue. I'll probably forget it and make something else that's stupid. Yes, let us now get into Finding Neverland. Chad, tell us about Finding Neverland.
You can fly, you can fly, you can fly. Finding Neverland, directed by Mark Forster, written by David McGee, cinematography by Roberto Schaefer, music by Jan A.P. Kaczmarek, starring Johnny Depp, Kate Winslet, Julie Christie, Radha Mitchell, Dustin Hoffman, Kelly MacDonald, Ian Hart, Freddie Highmore, Toby Jones, and Eileen Essel. Synopsis. The story of how J.M. Barrie befriended a family in need and developed the story of Peter Pan, based on the 1998 play The Man Who Was Peter Pan by Alan Nee.
Yes, another kind of biopic, but a little unconventional, talking about the creation of a story or something we know now rather than like just the life story of a particular person. Would also kind of be replicated with several other films. The most recent we saw, Hamnet last year, which I have thoughts on in comparing the two. But I'll go over to you first, Matty. You're a guest. What do you think of Finding Neverland?
Okay, so I mentioned to you guys privately 4 of the 5 of these movies I loved in 2004 and 2005. One of them kind of fell off. This was not one of them. I thought I was going to do that, or it was not one that fell off. It was one that I re-fell in love with. This is so Matt coded, this movie.
Yeah.
It is magical realism, which I love magical realism. The power of imagination, that being a story. It's just so much of this was just geared toward me. I knew I was probably still gonna like it. I didn't realize it was going to be in competition in my ranking the way it is. I really love this movie. It's a love letter to imagination, and I don't know. I thought that I was going to be lower on it, and that didn't happen. I just loved this movie again. Still.
Yeah, and I love that you love it. It's funny because it's the polar opposite of me, where I thought I was going to adore this just because it's Peter Pan and it's like, a charming, sweet British story. I love little British family films as well. But and I ended up liking it less than I thought I would. But that's not to say I don't like it at all. Like, I think it's really charming, really just sweet. And yeah, if you're looking at this like from like the family film angle and like the side of imagination and just like wonder and charm and whimsy, it definitely has all that. And I love that it still keeps itself contained and realistic. It doesn't feel like it has to go too fantastical either. It is still a grounded story. For me, it's tough because I just mentioned Hamnet, and I think the biggest problem is that for a movie like this, it is a little cheesy when like the references come in, if you know what I mean, like the little Easter eggs of like they'll say something and you'll be like, oh, that's gonna end up being that in Peter Pan, and like that's how artists work. They take from their lives, they take from their experiences, but it is a little neat in a way in how it's like, I heard the name Nana, and like, oh, that's gonna be the dog, and like the little things that like are going to kind of manifest in Peter Pan, and it's like, did it actually happen that way? But it's a movie, like it
is delightful things. Those
yes, but I mean, like it is kind of one of those things where like I think, and not to compare this with Hamnet, it's just so fresh in my brain, but like that movie didn't feel like every single second was like and this is going to be a Hamlet reference, and this is going to be a Hamlet reference. It was all kind of like thematically tied to Hamlet without needing, like, he wasn't just walking down the street and then said like saw something and that's what's going to be in the movie, whereas this has a little bit of that biopic-itis of like he's gonna stumble upon this thing or hear this thing, or the kid's name is Peter and the kids' names are John and Michael, which like probably true. I didn't dive into how historically accurate this was, how many liberties were taken, but I could definitely see, and maybe it's because Peter Pan is also a very oversaturated story at this point. There's so many versions of it that maybe just seeing all those references, I was kind of like, oh, okay, of course, like of course the kids are named John and Michael. But I think for other people that's actually really charming, it's really fun, it's really engaging, and obviously it is, and that's where I'm kind of acknowledging where, like, if I saw this in the moment at the time, I probably would have loved this. This is still very much my speed from a tonal aspect. It just, for me, it was a little much with the Easter eggs, where I think other movies have done it a little bit better, where their ideas are a little less overt, going through and like finding these references, and it might just be because I saw Hamnet last year and I liked it a lot more, and maybe that's just why, and I think that did a better job. There's still that moment though where he's on the bridge and he does the whole to be or not to be speech, and I'm like, oh, that's like the one moment of that movie where I'm like, okay, come on. But again, like I think there's definitely a function for it, and I think this does it still very successfully. I think it's very charming still.
If I can just if I could just counter that just real quick.
Yeah.
You're definitely entitled to that, and I'm not trying to change your mind necessarily. I will say, number one, Hamnet is definitely a different tonally
right.
Very, very different. That it would be out of place in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to mention two other things though. Number one, Shakespeare is not the main character in that movie, whereas James Matthew James Chapmond is my name. James Matthew Barry was the main character, so you get a lot of that. Two, I think you might be underselling how often when Shakespeare is on screen, they reference Hamlet.
True. I think it's also maybe not, but maybe it's all just like the recurring events, like they're all kind of happening at once, and this isn't even the biopic that does it the worst, but I mean like there are a lot of things happening at once that all of a sudden, like what are the odds that this and this all happen and they all end up being these big things in Peter Pan?
Right.
But that's a movie,
I can definitely see that. I will say, and it's definitely worse in another biopic that we're going to be talking about. The problem with biopic-itis is that this was the beginning of that. So a lot of the this movie, Walk the Line, and Ray are responsible for a lot of the things that are wrong with biopics today.
That at the time were not wrong.
That weren't problems back then.
But when you do reform, you make the formula over and over and over again, it becomes oversaturated. Which is why, again, like I think if I had seen this back in 2004, this would have probably been my favorite movie of the year. Maybe not. Incredibles probably would have been. But like, I do think it's one of those movies that I think time has honestly done it a disservice in the fact that we've gotten a lot of other movies like it. But again, this is one of the first examples of it to where I can't really knock this for that, even though nowadays it's just a little too cutesy schmaltzy for me. But again, that's what it's going for. So I'm not going to necessarily knock
Also,
it.
How about George? How would you feel if you were George, who did not get a character named after him in this movie, in that play?
Right? They're just like, we'll write him out of it. Chad, what are your thoughts on Finding Neverland?
Yeah, so I think I come sort of in the middle of where you guys are. Like, I don't think I'm like quite at like I adore this movie like Matt is, but like, I also like, I see where Dylan's coming from with the, oh, of course they're going to have that. Of course that, oh yeah, okay, I see where they're coming from. All right, sure, kind of a deal. I get that, but then you have moments in this movie like where, you have that special relationship between what's the name of the actor who's just
Freddie Highmore? Dustin Hoffman?
No,
Johnny Depp.
Where Johnny Depp, and between Johnny
I wish
Depp,
I could forget him too.
between Johnny Depp and Freddie Highmore, and then when he asks Freddie Highmore's character, he goes, "Do you mind if I use Peter for the main character?" And then I'm like, "Oh my god, this is such a sweet moment."
See, and I'm rolling my eyes, but that's the duality of man.
Like I just think it's because. See, I would roll my eyes too, I think, if I didn't think that this movie had any depth to it. And I think there's so much depth with... Oh,
yeah, it's very Johnny Depp.
What this family is going through with, just losing the father and just like the single mother trying to like hold this family together. And I find like it fascinating kind of like what they... Like the whole relationship between Johnny Depp and the family, or I should say Barry and the family, is that, because he goes through and like some people kind of see it as like this problematic thing where they're like, you're kind of hanging around this family. Do they even want you there, kind of a deal? And they dive into that a little bit in the film. And I love all of that. I think that just, it's just such an unconventional relationship, but it's something I think that the family needed and something that Barry needed, especially for like inspiration and stuff like that. So I love how like they work together, and this is something that and the stuff with Matt was talking about, magical realism, the idea of him finally presenting the play of Peter Pan to them and showing just how their life is represented in this. And then you have the mother walking into the play, and that symbolizes her dying.
Yeah,
and
that's the end of her story, which I thought was beautiful.
It's just when you get to that, I'm just like, oh my god, like that, because I thought it was gonna kind of be the too cheesy kind of a deal, and I do agree sometimes it is, but I think it is cheesy like for like an actual like purpose to have like all the deep stuff. And, I think that's where like, Matt comes in and loves it because of all that too.
I will say that I think this would have been a worse movie with less cheese. I think that the cheese is required. I think it makes it a better film.
Yeah, and you have to almost double down. It's like you can't half-ass the cheese. You're either getting a 4-cheese pizza or you're going gluten-free. You know,
right?
You can't, or vegan. I don't know.
Vegan, yeah,
exactly.
No cheese, you need the cheese. Dylan, I have a question for you as a theater person.
Yes.
The moment when the crowd reacted to Peter flying for the first time, how did that make you feel? Because it made me feel real
it's
good.
Beautiful.
And I'm not even as much of a...
And that's the thing. Like, it's schmaltzy, and I'm going to roll my eyes, but I still liked it. I still was like, I was really charmed by it. And I think of all these movies, if I'm to rewatch, this is the second movie I'm going to rewatch in terms of just rewatchability. Just because I think it's also... And maybe that's also because of the slate we're in. We're in some heavy movies. Even The Aviator is not like a heavy, dark, depressing movie by any means, maybe in some means, but like it's just long, it's dense. And then these other movies that we're going to talk about have like darker, sadder themes, are a little bit more melancholic. Even the ones that aren't like dramas are still like kind of melancholic, where this one, it's a refreshing just jolt of energy, which at times is a little too sugary for me in the context of the other 4 films. But I think this is in a slate with like The Incredibles, Shrek 2, not that these would be nominated, but like Spider-Man 2 and 13 Going on 30, this fits right in because it is kind of just that explosion of just whimsy and fun. And I think that's where context plays a big part in it too. And maybe it's the Johnny Depp of it all too that made it harder for me to be like in love with it. But I think Kate Winslet does a lot of the heavy lifting here too, and we talked about her a little bit. Chad brought her up, but like, yeah, just that like beautiful story with her as well. And yeah, all this stuff, I think it honestly ends in a much better spot than it starts. I think at the start you get a lot of the Easter eggs like off the bat early on, especially when he's meeting these kids for the first time. But I think honestly the midway portion to the end is actually where I think the film kind of eases up on that a little bit and kind of becomes a little bit more dramatic while still being sweet. And I think that's actually the perfect tonal balance. I think this ends in a much stronger place than it starts for me, which is good. I'd rather a movie build to something that's better than it started. And I do think if I rewatch this now knowing what it is and the tone of it, I think I will like it more, because also there is a musical version. I thought that's what you were about to ask me, which I think is very good, and maybe it's because I just knew that version first. Maybe that version also has singing, so I think the cheese lends itself a little bit better with like having actual musical numbers in it as well. This almost feels like a musical without the music in some ways. Like you're almost expecting them to burst out into song like a Mary Poppins, but it's not. But I think it doesn't have to be, and I think there are beautiful. I think honestly talking about it more, the more I'm realizing I was a little harsh on it just in my overall estimates of the movie, because like hearing you talk about it, like I do like it more than I did 10 minutes ago when we started, so
that happens to me all the time. Matt, I wanted to touch on that point though that you brought up about the Peter Pan flying and the audience going all losing their goddamn minds, is because you can see like the wires, like like not anything, but they make it magical for this audience, almost like that, the whole Scorsese of it, like with touching back to the magic of film, but the magic of theater, where it's like the audience in the theater reacting to the train coming at them. And just like, we're like, that's just a simple shot of a train coming at the camera. But the audience is like, oh, I've never seen something like that before. And the magic of that.
Yeah. No, I completely, I think that there's something that it says about theater itself that is really magical on both sides, because Dustin Hoffman, who plays the theater manager or whatever in this, who also played Captain Hook in Hook.
Great casting. Yeah. Intentional, you think? Intentional?
Yeah.
Has to be.
Okay.
I assume it has to. Yeah, it had to be. I think that when he's talking about and this is where, because there were some parallels to this and like The Greatest Showman, where there was a conversation about critics in it, but I think this actually does better service to critics than that one. I think Finding Neverland makes them seem heartless and whatever, or not Finding Neverland. The Greatest Showman makes them seem like heartless, joyless people. He actually brings up a good point, which is like critics made it. Not that critics don't belong or whatever, but critics changed it. Once people are talking about its value, it changes what it is. And I think that is a reasonable point. And as 3 critics here, I think we can kind of, think we can kind of see that. I also say in regards to casting Kelly MacDonald as Peter Pan, it was genius. I think that was genius. I wish we had seen a Peter Pan movie with her as Peter Pan.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to the tradition of Mary Martin kind of originating the role on Broadway, which is the musical version of this. I didn't even realize it was a play. Like going to this, I thought that it was about the writing of the book. I thought Peter Pan was just based on a book, so it's kind of nice that it was a play because I think you add that like whimsy and that visual element that also helps with a lot of the visual metaphors and the storytelling and what we do with Kate Winslet's character as well. And then the moments where it does kind of go a little bit more fantastical because, you now have that lens too, which I think is really, really special. I didn't realize how centered around like theater specifically it was, which is obviously warms my heart. And like you were saying with the Peter Pan taking flight and just wowing everyone, because that's ultimately why people still put it on and why, so many of the biggest successes of at least family Broadway storytelling or theater storytelling. It's when Tarzan takes flight in Tarzan, it was a flop, but when Spider-Man flew in the Spider-Man musical, it was pretty freaking cool. So I think it just like it shows the magic of theater, especially for an audience that might not have been as receptive to it or as knew that had the capabilities of doing what they could do with that.
Right. Last thing I kind of want to mention on this, and because we brought up Johnny Depp a couple times, this whole slate is full of people who have questionable legacies to this day. I actually think that this is a better slate of people who have questionable legacies because I think each of them, like, none of them are like they are definitely the scumbags we think they are, like thing. Johnny Depp, and I'll just say this right here. I'm not saying he's perfect and they didn't do anything on that. I think that the evidence that I have seen suggests that that he was the victim in most of that stuff. So I think they had a very toxic relationship, and that's the thing. So because we got as we mentioned before, Dustin Hoffman also, Jamie Foxx, even Morgan Freeman. Paul Haggis wrote $1 Million Baby. We have a lot of this stuff. I just think that they
Alexander Payne.
Alexander Payne. What did he do?
Oh, it's not important. But that's another name of someone who has allegations.
Are you confusing him with David O. Russell?
No, I mean, I don't think so. No, it's fine. It doesn't. I'm just.
I didn't know that about Alexander Payne.
It's okay. I'm just adding to your list. You're fine.
Oh, I didn't know that about him. Damn.
Okay. It's okay. That's the thing. Again, the point you're trying to make is it's not about that. It's the art. It's 2004.
We can definitely bring it up. It's important to that these things are brought up. But I think that I don't think that we are celebrating anybody who is definitely just awful people when we're talking about these. And that's all I really wanted to say about that.
Yeah. Cool. Chad, anything else on Finding Neverland?
My wife kind of grew up watching this. And I had never really watched it in full. And then as soon as I watched it in full, I was like, I understand why you watch this a lot because I found it very delightful.
Yeah. Last question.
Very sad too.
Yes. Last question I have for the panel. We're not all at a table. Maybe you're at a table. I'm not. What is your favorite Peter Pan adaptation? This is a good moment to say it. Mine is the 2003 PJ Hogan version. I love it. I believe Matt's wife, before we record this, said the same. It's just what I grew up with. And actually, the reason they released this a year later was because of that version. They didn't want to step on its toes, which I think is really admirable because, like, for a movie all about how this story has inspired people and how how much you thank this story and the creation of this, I think it's beautiful that they were like, we don't want to step on that adaptation's toes because we obviously clearly love Peter Pan enough. We're going to let you release that and we'll release this a year later, to allow both things to exist in the space and not one up or take or overstep or overshadow that one or upstage it, which is really beautiful, I think. But
mine is Hook.
Hook, nice. Matt, what's your favorite?
Probably the God, why did I forget his name? We just talked about it. The David
Lowery.
David Lowery movie.
Nice.
I love that one.
My wife loves Peter Pan. I'm not as in love with Peter Pan. So that one's probably the one that I liked the most. But I would say Finding Neverland is might be. I might just say Finding Neverland.
Yeah, which is interesting considering I think most people would say the animated Disney. So I think that's really cool that like everyone has a favorite version. Everyone has like something that speaks to them more. Movies that they love or hate with Peter Pan. There are some bad Peter Pan movies out there too. The Hugh Jackman Pan is critically panned. And then you know, some people have their feelings about David Lowery's version, even Hook, even this one, even the Peter Pan animated. You know, and that's what's beautiful about the story is that it's taken many forms. So this film definitely shows that. But Finding Neverland up for 7 nominations, wins 1 big one for original score, also nominated for picture, actor for Johnny Depp, adapted screenplay, art direction, costume design, and film editing. Peter Pan, if you were to tally up all the different box office grosses, probably grossed billions of dollars. Maybe not, maybe some millions, but either way, $1 million IP that stemmed from just one simple little baby idea. It is time to talk about another $1 million baby, if you will, with the movie Clint Eastwood's $1 Million Baby. Chad, tell us about $1 Million Baby.
All right, Makushla. $1 Million Baby, directed by Clint Eastwood, written by Paul Haggis, cinematography by Tom Stern, music by Clint Eastwood, starring Hilary Swank, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Jay Baruchel, Mike Coulter, Lucia Ridgeker, Brian F. O'Byrne, Anthony Mackie, Margot Martindale. Ricky Lindholm, and Michael Pena. Synopsis: a woman who comes from a toxic family aspires to become a great fighter. Based on the 2000 collection of short stories called Rope Burns by FX Tool.
Nice. First watch for me, actually. This is one that I feel like whenever I mention it's a first watch, Chad does exactly that. Because I've mentioned it a bunch. But yeah, like I think I was pretty underversed in Clint Eastwood when we started this journey. Obviously, we've covered Mystic River since, and I believe American Sniper. Those are the only two. One we really liked, one we really hated. And we will talk about, obviously, Unforgiven. There might be another one in there, too, that I'm forgetting. But like, I kind of, my Clint Eastwood movies that I've seen are kind of like the underrated, kind of like probably made in a few weeks, like Sully and Richard Jewell and Juror Number 2, like his style where it's like, like this was put up really quick. And this is also in that vein. It got more box office acclaim and more eyes than those other films. But this is a movie that started production, I think, in July, or at least started filming in July, was rushed into production, rushed into being released, limited in December. It ended up being a huge box office hit at the same time where the Oscar nominations were rolling out. So it really just came out. It's one of those right place, right time, underdog stories. It's kind of what you wish if you're not a big production by like Martin Scorsese and Clint Eastwood at the time. It's still won Best Picture and Director before, but you know, if you're not one of those big studio films, how do you break through the Best Picture race? This is kind of how it's like you find the right time to strike, to find that pocket. You become culturally relevant. You stay in the cultural zeitgeist. You stay the fresher film. And a lot of the times when we have those debates of big upsets, it's usually what was released later that kind of the other frontrunner gets tired. We see this a lot in Oscars where the frontrunner is the frontrunner for so long that there's fatigue and they just get bored and want to give it to something else. We saw that with Power of the Dog and Coda recently. We saw that, plenty of other times. We saw that with 1917 and Parasite a little bit. And even that, 1917 was released in January wide. So even before that, it was like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So we've seen this happen a lot where like you'll have a big film that just gets usurped by a smaller film that just kind of finds the passion at the right time, which is really cool for Oscar's sake. But Chad, you had seen this before, and I know you've been itching for me to watch this for so long. You picked this slate, I think because of this, you told me. So what are your thoughts? I'll let you open with $1 Million Baby.
Yeah, this is the only one that I had seen all the way through.
Okay.
And I
prior to this, right? You've watched them all now. Okay.
Yeah. I actually have an interesting like journey with this movie because I watched it not like right when it came out. I watched it about probably 10 years after it came out. I guess when I was 14 wasn't watching movies like this. But
sorry, I have you beat. I watched it 22 years after, so don't feel embarrassed by that.
But I watched it probably around like 2014 or 2013. And when I watched it, I had heard a lot about it. Like The Office had made references to it and stuff. Yeah. I watched it. I was really loving it. And then it takes its turn. And then I remember finishing it and going, what the fuck did I just watch? What? It ends like that? Like, what is going on? Like, why would anybody like this? this hurt my feelings, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And then watching it at least, I think 2 more times after, maybe just 1 more time after that, I watched it and I was like, okay, I've officially fallen in love with this movie. I don't know. I think just like this movie is just one of those incredible movies to win Best Picture like ever. I love Clint Eastwood's style. I mean, like I said before, this has kind of like a Shawshank kind of vibe to it with the Morgan Freeman narration, and he's an actor in it. And he kind of has a similar vibe where he's not like the star, but he's kind of like the side guy who gives advice a lot. And he's just like one of the best parts of the movie. Clint Eastwood's character is great. I love how they build this relationship between Clint Eastwood and Hilary Swank. And I love how kind of like, soft spoken she is, but then she becomes like a much stronger character. And like, she has like these moments where she like stands up for herself to Clint and is just like, I need a trainer and stuff like that. But she's always like, I'll buy my own speed bag and things like that. Love her integrity. And then just going on to it's just such a thing to see where she can barely, like, she's been doing this for like 3 years and she's older. And he even makes a comment like, you're a girl, you're older. Like someone might want to train you, but I don't, because that's just not what I'm looking for, and then she becomes like one of the best fighters like ever. And then it takes its turn. But I just love like when she stands up to her family and she, just has like this whole thing where she's like, it's kind of like, and we'll get there one day, but the black swan of it, where it's like, I was perfect, for just a little bit of time, and I want to hold on to that. It's kind of like reminds me of a little bit of like the Breaking Bad of it, where he's like, I don't want like my life to go on to be whatever it's going to be now because of this. And, I don't know. I just love that relationship. It's like they form like the perfect, like little, like the most unlikely, like this hardened boxer trainer and this young woman, yet they're both what each other needed to better their lives. Like, he fell out of relationship with his daughter. And so he found the daughter that he always wanted, kind of a deal. And she found a father figure because she lost hers. And then her family is just a bunch of pieces of shit, just all wrapped into one big shit package where she's like, paralyzed in bed. And then they go to Universal Studios and like, she's fine. We would have taken her, but she can't go. And it's like, what? Who are these fucking people? And I know they exist. I know people like this exist, and I don't want to know them because, that's just one of the most terrible things you can do to your child. I couldn't even imagine doing something like that to like, my son or, just anybody having that happen to them. But anyway, I adore this movie. I just think it's just so incredible.
I'm glad you love it. I do. I looked up to see if it was a true story or not, just because I'm curious, like, if this actually happened, and it didn't. So it's fictionalized, which is very interesting as well.
That's good.
Which is good. So those people probably didn't exist, but there are people like that exist out there. I just hope the movie doesn't make a stereotype about like poor people in the South by painting all of them in that certain way. I don't think it's trying to. No.
Yeah, those are the characters. I think that's just what they happen to be.
Yeah. But I definitely have seen criticisms about that, and how it kind of, characterizes them in a certain way. That kind of, it's a very like conservative way of thinking about certain types of people and certain classes and all that stuff.
They also do the same thing with the Clark's family and Superman.
Exactly. So, but either way, I do think it's very interesting. I kind of want to rewatch this, and I wish I had time to rewatch this for this, because I think it's one of those movies that, like, I knew what was coming. I knew that I didn't know. I think it wasn't a shocker when what happened happened. I was shocked at how visceral and how graphic it was.
Yeah.
I didn't think I just thought, I knew she ended up paralyzed. I knew the whole second half was more of like a drama in that sense. I think leading up to it, it was kind of, not your stereotypical fighting movie, but like it hit not even cliches, but it was just a solid fighting movie. And like the Morgan Freeman narration, take it or leave it. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but again, like I understand how people could like it or not. But then when it takes its turn, I do think that's honestly what makes it different from other movies like that. Kind of how we talked about like the Aviator, the plane stuff made it different than any other movie about classic Hollywood or any other just like biopic about a director. Is that this guy flew planes and was this such a trailblazer in that department. Whereas I think this one's so different from all the fighting movies because it shows the main character losing to the point where like dies in the ring and not dies in the ring, but you know what I mean, like literally their life is forever changed and ended because of it, which then kind of really hammers home the father-daughter dynamic, which I really think is beautiful. I think Clint Eastwood, first half of the movie, I was like, this guy, all he does is the same thing. He just grunts and mumbles, and like I'm not a fan of his performance. In the second half, he does some things where I'm like, oh, like I'm touched. This is beautiful acting work, which I didn't expect, just because I haven't seen a lot of his acting work, and a lot of it has been like just classic Western stuff. That like all I know him as for a while is just the grunting old man, you know. But I do love that he has such a tender few moments in that second half. But then there also comes the question of you know, like this is a fictionalized story, so you know, this didn't happen, but what does it have to say about life and when you choose to end your life, or if you even have the choice, or you kind of like we were saying the Black Swan thing of like it was perfection but you're also losing it all, but like do you want to live in that pain? Do you want to escape the pain? But what does that say about, you know, just death and life? And I think it makes some interesting questions. I'm not always 100% sure if I'm taking away the best messaging from it, in the sense that, you know, she ultimately does choose to end her life, or he ends it for her, I guess. It seems like it's consensual, at least by the look she gives him. I don't think he's like murdering her out of her will, but you know, I do, against her will, I should say. But that's where I want to rewatch this, because I think thematically it will make a lot more sense, because I knew where it was going, and I was just kind of waiting for the turn, and I could see also on a first watch that being such a shocking turn, because again, that's what kind of separates it from other sports movies, is that she doesn't have a triumphant end, and even when she gets knocked down, you think there's a chance. You know, the next scene she's like learning, like it's kind of like that Jake Gyllenhaal movie Stronger, where like he rehabilitates himself and then gets back in the ring, or gets not back in the ring, but like has a successful life and goes on to do great things and achieve great things. It's like 127 hours. Like he cuts himself free, but then he's such a pioneer for people with disabilities and stuff like that. But that's not what this film is. It goes a very darker and colder route than you're expecting, which does make it polarizing. It does make it very memorable, and I can see why that kind of left a big statement with the audience. But Matt, I'm excited to hear what you have to say as well, because I know you had some thoughts on why exactly this did just strike you as soon as you saw it as like this is going to be your best picture winner. You know what I mean?
Well, first of all, let me kind of talk about the movie itself a little bit. Mm-hmm. Number one, yeah, Clint Eastwood was not really known for his acting, but he did this and then Gran Torino, and that kind of 1-2 punch made him kind of a big name for a little bit. So much so that when he talked to that empty chair, it was like, oh, come on, like. Yeah. But it did a lot. Those two movies did a lot for his acting career. And I agree with you. At first, it's just like, what even is happening? But by the end, he's like, it doesn't seem like anything of a performance. Like, and especially, you know, by this point, by the time I watched it, I knew that he was nominated for Best Actor. I was like, this has to be a legacy thing. So then but when you get to that second half, he's very good. Like you understand why he is nominated for Best Actor. For sure. I'll also say something about his directing style. I'm not a big fan of some of the movies that he directs because he doesn't get a lot of coverage. So he will do like 1 or 2 takes and then move on. And sometimes it can make your films feel his films feel less polished, which is fine in some cases, but he's got the budget. Everything else feels more polished than you know, like the choices that were the scenes that were selected for the whatever. I will say this one doesn't have any of that, which I appreciate. I don't ever feel like he got the first take. It feels like he just got the right take, and so I really enjoy that. I will say that as a director, I've directed a few things for my work, or for actually an old job I used to do. I made a few videos for them. I had heard a long time ago that when Clint Eastwood was directing a movie, he doesn't say action. He says whenever you're ready.
Hmm.
And then when he's done, he doesn't say cut. He says okay. And that's what I do.
Nice.
I love that. Like I was like,
Yeah.
that's right. Just whenever you're ready, go. Like, and then when it's done, it's like, all right. Like I
Very
do the
casual.
same thing now
Yeah.
when I direct. It's whenever you're ready and okay.
Yeah, and for a movie like this that is so like quiet at times and
Yeah.
so intimate, you kind of want that. You don't
Yeah,
want like
exactly.
all right, cut. You know, like you don't want to
Yeah.
break the immersion because it's not method acting, but you have to be in it because
Right.
it is dark and it's delicate subject matter. You know?
Exactly.
There's like one scene between Hilary Swank and Clint Eastwood where they're talking. They're actually finally starting to make headway on their relationship and really start it. And like just the way it shows her and then shows him, and he's like partially in shadow, and like he's about to teach her some stuff, and it's like dark and stuff like that. Or maybe I'm mixing it up with her and Morgan Freeman, but like all those like little scenes I just think are so perfect, especially where they show her. She's all like sweaty and stuff and just like looks so unkempt and stuff like that. Just all these choices I just think are so perfect.
Right. Well, and I think that's where this movie shines best is those little character moments together, like those little small scenes, interactive scenes. The boxing stuff is great. I will say about the moment that it happens. Yeah, back then we didn't know what was going to happen in it.
Oh boy.
In fact, that every time I see that episode of The Office where
He's gonna kill me.
He's gonna kill me. I'm like, that's a spoiler. But
you know, I just clocked that right now. I'm like, I didn't even realize. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, because he calls her Manushka.
Yeah.
She's
Okay.
like
yeah,
Manushka,
yeah.
and he's like
Yeah.
$1 Million Baby. He's watching $1 Million. He's Makushla. He's watching $1 Million Baby. He's gonna kill me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which that is also like one of the best things about the movie too is Makushla and how they name her that, and she's like, well, they were screaming my name. Well, not my name, some dumb name you gave me, but like, what does it mean? I just want to know what it means. And he whispers it to her like right before she passes, and that's just
such
so beautiful. It's like my darling, my blood, and
it's absolutely beautiful. But all of that, I will say that the moment that it happens, I've talked about in the past and not on your show, but in other places, that the Best Picture winner the next year, there's a moment in it that some people think is cheesy, but I jumped out of my seat in shock when it happened. It was very similar to this when that because she's upward, she's going like she is going places. She's having
won essentially too.
She's basically won. She is her life is going a direction that is going to be amazing for her. And then when that girl comes behind and punches her and she falls and the fact that he had just put that out there and he reaches out trying to get all of that, just like, oh my God. Oh, I did not expect that. That's, oh my God.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it was a big moment and very, very heartbreaking. Which brings me to the thing, like the cultural thing that kind of made me feel like this had more legs than people thought. But also, I think what makes this movie so timely and what makes this movie, especially for when it came out, such an important film. Around this time, actually for probably the decade before this, but a lot of it really came to culmination around the time this movie was released. So I don't think this movie was a commentary on this necessarily, but there was a lot of stuff around the time it was released. The Right to Die.
Terry Schiavo and all that.
Terry Schiavo is exactly what I'm going to talk about. Well, but even before that, Jack Kevorkian. People say his name, they have this negative view of him. And you can if you want, but what he was doing was allowing people their right to die.
Yeah.
When it comes Terry Schiavo, if people don't know what happened with her, she had a heart attack and basically went into a vegetative state. So she was being kept alive. She was only being kept alive with equipment, like with machines. And she didn't have a living will, so her husband and her parents were in charge. Her husband knew that she would not want to live on machines.
Yeah.
Her parents said, no, we're not going to take my daughter off the machine. She needs to live. So it became this years-long court battle, which most of it was behind the scenes. It wasn't, but it didn't come, but it came to a huge head around the end of 2004, the beginning of 2005.
Yeah.
So there was this huge conversation. People were talking back and forth. Like just this, it was all over the culture. Does a person have the right to die? Do you keep them on, keep somebody on life support if they don't want to be? And how do you decide what they would want? Is it the husband's right to decide that? Are the parents right to keep her on there? Depending on how much, if she had any brain, if she's completely brain dead, one thing. If she had anything, like, was she feeling it? Was she suffering? What was happening? Huge conversation.
Yeah.
So that was very much in the public consciousness around this time, and especially when it won. So much so that it winning sparked more debate about this. I would say we have our friend Carly, who we all love. She had mentioned to me, and she said that I could mention it on the show here. She was saying that her biggest gripe with this movie was that was the idea that someone couldn't, like, that if someone was disabled, that death was the option for them, that they because the people who are disabled can go on to live very successful and fulfilling lives.
I did find the actual quote if you want to hear it.
Okay, yes.
She said, I absolutely hate the framing of disability being worse than death, and it being the ultimate tragedy when there are so many individuals that can live meaningful lives after a severe disability like what she suffers. I did really like the movie. I just wanted to throw that out there in case either of you wanted to mention it or if it comes up, which I think is a valid criticism for sure. And that's kind of where I was coming from too. Yeah.
And I think that is too. And my view on that is not. I think it's a valid criticism. I just have a different perspective on what this movie is saying. Because I don't think it's saying that at all. I think that the if it was saying that, they would have said it, and nobody says that in the film. If they had said that, that would be one thing, but nobody says that. The important thing is that she cannot live without the machines. She cannot breathe on her own. And the question is, does she have the right to decide that she doesn't want to live with a machine?
It's about the choice.
It's about the choice of whether she gets to. And to be, and I agree. And I told Carly this. I told her that her perspective has complete value. I completely understand that. I do have a different perspective on it. And then the reason my perspective, the part of the reason my perspective is different on that is that if the movie were about, and I know this is a sensitive topic for a lot of us, if it were about a suicide, people can live productive lives depressed. People can live productive lives, whatever. If it were about any type of choice for a person, their personal choice of a person for them to die, it's the same thing. It's just because it's happening doesn't mean it's saying that's the only option. It's in fact, a lot of it is saying, there's an attempt there to have her, try to continue on. It's not until it gets to the point where she will not do it. She keeps biting her tongue to try to she is going to do this. She has made clear, I do not want to live like this. And it's at that point that there's the question. Personally, and if anybody wants to know my personal thing, I think adults, never teenagers. Adults have the right to decide if they want to die. I do think that suicide prevention is absolutely important and should be available. And I think that if you see someone trying to do something to themselves, you should stop them. However, I do think that a person has the right to decide that thing, and if they decide that, it's sad and that sucks, and sometimes sucks. But in the case of like someone who is brain dead, it's, do you want them to keep? Are they suffering? Do you want them to keep suffering? So, as a matter of ending suffering, I think that makes sense. I think that teenagers should not have this choice, and I think that I do believe that two adults can have a conversation about it and discuss it, and that they should be allowed to do that, but two teenagers should never be allowed to continue that.
Yeah.
That's the important thing that I wanted to make clear. Teenagers don't ever do it. Actually,
Yeah.
adults don't ever do it, but I'm just saying I think you should have the right, even if I don't think you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a valid criticism to like think about. Like, it's like, well, could she have lived like a productive life and stuff like that? I'm sure maybe like people do, like she could have had like machines and stuff at her house and things like that if she had wanted to. But I do think it's the important thing is that it's her choice, and that there is like a little before she makes that decision, and then you see the accident, there's a little bit of time. They show her laughing and engaging with Clint Eastwood. It's not like she's just miserable the entire time and stuff. And it seems like maybe she's contemplating this choice. Like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And, I've done the thing that I wanted to do, but do I want to continue this? And then I love how it goes back to the story she talked about with like her dad, putting down the dog that was sick. And then it's just like it goes to like her life experience where she thinks back to a specific situation where she's like, yeah, like the dog had some funny moments when he was sick and stuff, but like ultimately he couldn't live like a life that he wanted to live anymore. And I think that's the very important thing is the choice that she makes, that like I don't think the movie is framing it as anyone who's disabled probably shouldn't go on living. I don't think that's what it's saying. If that is what it was saying, I don't think this is a good movie. I think that would be very problematic. But yeah. It's a good question to bring up, though.
Yeah, and I do think some people would sadly take the wrong message from this, but that could be said about any movie ever, where there's complex characters. It's like there's definitely going to be someone who watches this who says, oh, that's the easy way out, that's the way out. Especially with like the whole fact that she is such a fighter. It's sad to see her at the end still fighting, but ultimately lose that other fight. It's like it's a double whammy. Yeah.
But they comment on that too. It's like I've always fought and stuff like that. And I guess
that's I think important too.
Fight I don't want to have. Right
now. Which is a really cool kind of like thematic circle. But yeah, I kind of agree with both sides. Yeah, I definitely think the choice is the main thing, but I still personally. Not even that I disagree with her choice. It's more so it's harder to watch, and it's obviously hard to watch for all of us. But I think it makes it hard. Like I will never rewatch this just because it's like just something I can't. It's just painful to watch, and it's painful and that's also where I think the performances are so strong too. Is that like as Clint Eastwood, like how are you in this position? You have to be the one to do it too. And like what does that do? What does that say? Morgan Freeman is the kind of the one who's standing by watching. It's like how do these characters feel in the moment too? Like what does that do to the human spirit and the human soul? And it's crushing. And I think that's the thing. This movie's so crushing that it's like I can't even say I liked it because it's crushing, but it's also like that's the purpose.
I'm glad that they have like the palate, little bit of a palate cleanser after she passes with Danger and stuff, and the relationship he has with Morgan Freeman, and then you have like the shot of like Clint Eastwood at the diner, and I don't know. I feel like those like little moments add a little bit of kind of levity and just like character moments. You see like life is going on and stuff like that, and you're not just living in that decision and that moment of her passing, and just like the way the shot just kind of moves away from her bed as he walks away, like we've done it, and I'm just like, oh, it's crushing, but
yeah, I mean it's very effective. Yeah, very effective. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. Matt, you are muted. I know you're trying to talk. But,
I just saw that. I like that the end of her story is also the end of his story. The movie does go on a little bit, and you get that shot of him at the diner, but once that's over, his story is also over. And Morgan Freeman basically takes over from that point. He is now the main character of this film. I will say that I think that modern film conversation is too hard on narration. I think narration is a very valuable tool to use in your film. I don't think every movie should, and there are some that shouldn't. But I think that there's this idea that narration is lazy, and that couldn't be further from the truth, in my opinion.
Like,
I think in this, it's very valuable to know what he's thinking without him going, now this is going to be able to do the job, several times over.
Right.
If he had said that to her, that would not have been as effective as him doing it, and then Morgan Freeman saying he gave her enough to do the job several times over.
Yeah,
go
ahead.
And no, I was just going to say, and then it's kind of like a perfect like little storybook way to do it in film, where it's like, and then he didn't come around anymore. Rather than just showing he didn't come around anymore, it's just like something that feels very final.
And I like what you're saying about Shawshank, is that while I do think the narration in Shawshank is probably stronger, I do feel like just what you said, like, and then he didn't come around anymore, feels very much affecting in the same way that I think I just missed my friend. Like, I think that it's like a very similar thing.
Yeah, I agree. I do think for this particular film, because it is so heavy in the end, I think that honestly the narration helps add a little levity to it, or at least not make it so dismal and dark. We're going to bring it up again, but The Irishman is the very opposite, where we linger in that final shot, and all you have to do is have your own thoughts. Like, you are able to kind of piece it together, which I think, I don't think Clint Eastwood saying this ought to do it would be better, but I also don't think just silence in general would have been bad either. Like, I think there is also a moment where, like, it just
I want the version where he's like, this ought to do it.
Yeah, but, like, I do think, though, like, having nothing would also be effective. Like, I think that's the thing, is it didn't need to have the narration, but the narration itself is better than the character saying it. But even then, like, I think it adds something else that doesn't make this just a dismal, like, sad fest. This is not a Haneke film. This is a Clint Eastwood film. And, I do think there's a little bit more to the narration than other films, for sure. I still am a little bit more, not anti-narration, but I think more often than not, people don't know how to use it properly. Here, I think they use it properly, even though I'm still not the biggest fan of it. Also, because Morgan Freeman has such a rich, beautiful voice, but it is one of those voices that, like, if you're watching this movie at 11 p.m., there's a chance it could lull you to sleep in a positive way, in a good way. I mean, the only film I ever walked out on in theaters was March of the Penguins. Not because, I thought it was bad, but because Morgan Freeman's voice was putting me in such a lull that I accidentally bit down on a popcorn kernel and broke my tooth and had to leave the theater. But again, it's Martin Freeman. Morgan Freeman too. Morgan Freeman has such a great voice, though, that I think if you're going to have anyone narrate these Best Picture winning or nominated films, he's a good one to do it,
Yeah.
So, $1 Million Baby, though. Anything else on this film? No? Cool.
I don't think so. I think that my big thing was that I did want to say one thing, because we brought up the idea of Southern families and the stereotype that might be. I can agree with that. I feel like if people take away that is how Southern families are, then that's one thing. I will say I know those people, so they do exist, and I think that's the important thing to do. I think that if we had more characters in this movie, they might have been able to show that. Hashtag not all Southern families, but
I think they do, because, like, Makushla herself is a Southern woman,
right? Yeah,
and we see just how much integrity she has. So I think you just in her
Danger too. Danger's Southern, so yeah.
And if anything, it's just it's the recycled trope.
He does drop some bombs in that movie, though. Other than that.
But definitely, like, it's just a kind of recycled trope. It's like, of course, this rags to riches boxer comes from, like, this white trash family. I think it also doesn't help that it's Clint Eastwood making this film too, where, like, of course it's like the hardworking waitress against the Russian prostitute, and prostitution's evil. Like, again, that's just the right wing Clint Eastwood. He's an old, not now at this point 90-something-year-old Republican man giving us these attitudes on the South and
never
women.
Die.
Who will never die. So we'll talk about him in 10 more years when he's 110 or whatever. But just interesting. Again, time capsule of its time. But $1 Million Baby, clearly the big winner here. Wins 4 of its 7 nominations. Wins Best Picture, Best Director for Clint Eastwood, Best Actress for Hilary Swank, Best Supporting Actor for Morgan Freeman. Nominated also for Clint Eastwood for Best Actor and Adapted Screenplay and Film Editing. But I don't really know if there's an easy segue here. I was going to say something about disabilities, but that seems really, really tone deaf. So I'll just say this. Clint Eastwood didn't win Best Actor. You know who did? Jamie Foxx for Ray. Let's talk about Ray, Chad.
Georgia.
I was
Ray.
gonna say there's a southern option.
Oh
there.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Ray, directed by Taylor Hackford, written by James L. White, cinematography by Powell Edelman, music by Craig Armstrong, starring Jamie Foxx, Kerry Washington, Clifton Powell, Anjanou Ellis, Harry Lennox, Terrence Howard, Lawrence Tate. Synopsis: a man who copes with early onset blindness due to glaucoma and a tragic loss of his brother in a drowning accident ascends to greatness with his musical talent, but suffers from addiction, which threatens to destroy everything. Ray, you don't want none of this shit. There you go.
Yes. I will say, I feel like some of these movies, it's been like praises, and then I come in with the criticism. So I want to start with this because I feel like I'm going to be the lowest on this movie. I just want to start with it. This is the one I don't love, but
I missed Regina King. Sorry.
Regina.
Yeah.
Oh yes, of course, Regina King.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I don't know how I didn't have her.
It's okay. Let's say her name twice. Regina King. Amazing.
Regina King.
This is the one. Yeah, this is the one I don't love only because kind of what Matt said with Finding Neverland, even to a more extreme degree. Before this, there were only a handful of music biopics, and like Shine is very unconventional. Coal Miner's Daughter was like the first one. There's really not a ton of them. After this, there are a ton of them, and sadly, they all kind of follow a similar format to where watching this now, I'm like, damn, this is one where I really wish I'd seen it in 2004 because I think I would have liked it more than I do now. But having seen so many biopics, Bohemian Rhapsody and Walk the Line, and those are the only two that come to mind, but there's so many other ones. The Respect, what else? There's so many more. Did I say Bohemian Rhapsody? Yes, Complete Unknown. Yes. But that's the thing. Like, we've seen so many biopics kind of take this template, and I think it's a disservice to this film now. But again, this is me as a 2026 viewer watching a movie that's 22 years old for the first time, having seen all the films that would follow suit. Also, because there's a really great parody about these types of movies with Walk Hard. That like after that, it should have been like, okay, yeah, that's the joke, we're done. And now it's like, no, but some films are still going to do that, and still get nominations and get more wins than this. This wins 2 awards. Bohemian Rhapsody wins 4, and I think this is a better film than that. So I do want to take that with a grain of salt, knowing that like movies that came after this kind of make this worse only because this is the template. But I think now seeing it repeated, you're able to recognize what the faults are. And that's the thing where like it's not the fact that all the movies came after and I'm seeing this last. It's the fact that this did set some tropes that I just don't think are really great storytelling tropes. Obviously it's what they thought was effective at the time, but you know, the idea of like certain events happening very conveniently at the same time other events happening. It's the idea of Bohemian Rhapsody where like, oh, he happened to come out to his parents the same night as Live Aid. It's like, no, that's not true. And same is true with like this film. Like there's a lot of moments where it's like, oh yeah, he happened to go blind the same day this happened, you know, or started his path to blindness, I guess, on this same day. And you know, just the way you have to weave certain music into the film and kind of almost build your narrative around the music in a way, if you're not going to go beat for beat on the Wikipedia page, what this film kind of does as well. But what is true with all music biopics for the most part is that it really is a great performance vehicle, especially when the actor is singing themselves, when they are doing most of the work themselves, which is also a disservice considering in this sense it is all lip sunk. But we know he can also sing because he has some tracks in the credits that you know, I think Jamie Foxx actually sings on, and he's done other collabs as like almost as Ray Charles.
He does
singing.
the Ray Charles songs in this movie.
I didn't think so, but I may have been reading
that was
wrong.
the big thing when it came out, was everybody talking about how he does the
okay, I might have gotten misinformation.
Don't
trust Wikipedia. Don't trust Wikipedia.
Maybe hey, information might be better today than it was in 2004.
But that's all my stipulations with this movie.
If he did do the songs, he did a fantastic job. Holy shit.
That was the narrative back then. That's one of the reasons he won.
Interesting.
In my opinion.
But you guys talk about it. I'll find more information out on that. But you guys,
I think with Ray, this is weird because I thought it was gonna be like the cookie cutter kind of music biopic thing, but for me, I don't know. I didn't really get that. Like I know, like Walk Hard, like kind of made fun of it, and as soon as I got that whole bit, with the you don't want none of this shit,
you don't want none of this shit,
Dewey or whatever, and I can see that and stuff where some things have taken from it and kind of like made fun of it a little bit, but like I see a lot of more depth in this, where it's like the Ray succumbing to drugs and just kind of like the constant guilt that he has for his brother, even though it's been decades, and just the idea of him being so capable as a blind man. Yeah, I get the idea of like, the same day he lost his brother and became blind kind of a deal, but like, yeah, I think for like, pacing and stuff that it works. I love how they show all that in like a cinematic way of him, learning how to be blind at a young age, the relationship with his mother and how that might inform like, his relationships going forward and how that's all very complicated with him. All the stuff that's complicated between Ray Charles and like the music industry and how, you have it's kind of like, a movie that we'll talk about at one point, The Fighter, where it's like, the difference between, like kind of like the family style where he had with his, kind of indie label versus like going on to the big label that, is gonna, or ABC or whatever, that's gonna like pay him a lot to, become even greater. It's like, what do you do here? You got to better yourself and, go with the big thing, but like you're kind of betraying your family a little bit. And I love how it touches on all that to where for me, this doesn't feel like a Bohemian Rhapsody, because Bohemian Rhapsody does feel like more like a Finding Neverland, where it's like, oh yeah, that's where they're saying they wrote that song, and it kind of feels like more of an eye roll thing. Whereas with Ray, I just felt a lot of deeper. But I do like, to Dylan's credit, I do think that a lot of that is the performance.
Yeah.
From Jamie Foxx, but also a lot of the performances in the movie. Even I forget the guy's name, but the guy who plays Metatron in Supernatural, he plays his like manager, and he's incredible in it too. Yeah, honestly, I just think that there's a lot of depth in this, and I actually really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I'm glad because the performance is great. And just to clarify, just because I did fact check it, the piano playing was all authentic. They were gonna have a stunt double, but found out that he actually went to college on a classical piano scholarship, so they actually had him actually playing piano. He also does sing. He doesn't sing as Ray Charles, but in the movie, when Ray Charles sings other artists' songs at the beginning of the movie, when he has the covers, that was Jamie Foxx, because there's no recorded versions of Ray Charles singing those, but all the recorded Ray Charles proper songs that he does in the studios at the piano and all that is actually Ray Charles's voice. But the blindness was also real. They actually put prosthetics over his eyes to give him the actual authentic blindness, which I think, again, like, regardless, I think he's an amazing singer. We've heard him sing even on like Fallon. He's so good. So like, I don't think that should take away from it. And it is the performance. It's not just the vocals. And we've seen so many classic Hollywood movies where, like, in some of my favorite movies ever, West Side Story, and we just talked about what did we just talk about with Kelsey? My Fair Lady. There's a lot of movies where actresses are dubbed, so like it's not a big deal, especially when it's Ray Charles and when he was still alive, to have some consent while they were making it. Obviously, he passed away before it came out, but Jamie Foxx, I think, is the movie, and I think that's kind of where you can kind of ignore all the biopic cliches and just focus on the performance and still find enjoyment of it. And I found enjoyment in the performance.
I'll just say that I was glad that this was the one that you didn't like, because it's one that I loved in 2004. But as I will rewatch, and I own it, this movie. I'll tell you that my after seeing this movie in 2004, my Ray Charles CD collection went up by like 300%. And I really liked this film. Rewatching it lost something, and part of it is oversaturation, thematic oversaturation, probably. There's a lot that could go into making this not work for me as well as it did back in 2024 or 2004. But I think it's just not timeless, and I think that that's not its fault. I will say that it can't be the saturation thing for me, and that this is what I was thinking, because I rewatched Walk the Line last year, and I still love that movie. And it could be because I'm just such a big
James Mangold fan.
Well, James Mangold and Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still love that movie, and this one just didn't. It has a similar problem to The Aviator for me, which is that I felt like it just went from scene to scene to tell me a bit, and didn't really like tell me this like full thing. And it did in a way. I think it did better than The Aviator did as far as telling a more cohesive story. But it did feel like we just kept going from one thing to the next. I will say that I think that I have kind of conflicting feelings on when biopics, because some people are like, actually, usually the same people will say both things, and that is that they are mad when a biopic is made without any involvement or approval from the people involved, and then they're mad if the person if it's made with the involvement of people who were involved. So it's you can't win there. Like both the same people complain about both things, and it's whatever. I prefer a biopic made by someone who is not involved because it gives warts and all.
Yeah,
with still consent, but also
interesting. A public figure I don't think needs consent to make it.
Right.
We don't need consent to make a George Washington movie. Like a public figure does not need they don't need consent, in my opinion. I think that if you're going to paint them in a light that is inaccurate, that is a problem. But I think that I generally think that it should be people make it should be neutral on the situation. They should tell it as it is. And again, this is the person who doesn't care about historical accuracy in movies, because it's silly. But I will say that it's interesting because Ray Charles did have some involvement, and his son Ray Jr. was one of the producers. And it did not paint him in a good light at all. Right. So I think that I actually really appreciate. And that was something I appreciated back then. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is. There's a lot of visuals in this that really, really work for me. There's a lot of the performances are all great. Richard Schiff from The West Wing is in it. And again, I'm rewatching The West Wing right now, and it's probably my second favorite show of all time. And they gave him hair, which made it feel really weird because he's a very bald man. But I think the performances are really great in this. It just something about it did not click for me, and I've seen it many times. Like I said, I own this movie. It's just this time, and I haven't watched it in probably a decade or more, maybe 15 years. So something about the time that has passed made me go, wow, this just doesn't hold up the way it used to.
Yeah. And maybe also the cultural moment of it. Like, Chad and I love the musical Rent, but there's a lot to be said of like that musical got very popular because the composer died the night it opened. Like that's a big part of why it got eyes.
I also love Rent.
Yes, I didn't know for sure. But yeah, like Rent, it's a great musical. It would have been successful either way, but I think it was overly successful because of the story. And I think that's the same thing with this too. Ray Charles dies right before this is released. I think that adds a lot of like gravitas to it, where I think people were willing to be a little bit more forgiving. Because also, like they didn't know that these were necessarily tropes that would manifest. And even if we're looking at it as like the first of all these tropes, like Chad said, like the performance is so good that I can see why people love this one. And like I understand that. It's not for me, but
right.
Chad.
And I will say also that Walk the Line and Ray were like produced around the same time, so it's very interesting that their structure is so similar. Like they obviously nobody was obviously copying off of anybody, but their structure is so similar. It's very interesting.
Yeah, but this one gets nominated and that one doesn't, and that one I think is more well received than this one is, which is kind of the weirdest thing about it. It's like it really is interesting what biopics kind of stick around and what don't. Chad, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I like this type of movie because I can't disagree that it has a similar formula. I think this one's, from my memory, a little bit deeper than Walk the Line. Even though I also love Walk the Line, it's just because I think when it goes back to his childhood a lot, and like just thinking about like Carrie and I were commenting like, apparently kids can drown in that like shallow of water, and so it's like be careful. And that's why we always have to like, have an eye on Elliot when he's in the bath and stuff and just make sure, whatever. But like, just like, how like the haunting imagery of him, like always finding himself in like a pool of water and stuff and just thinking back to his childhood. Just love like the imagery of that. Like, I don't think they have stuff like that in Bohemian Rhapsody and things like that, that level of depth there. And
Walk the Line also has a dead brother. It's just a different way that he died. That's what I'm saying. Like they are
wrong one.
The wrong one died.
Which is a very again recycled trope. Yeah, the wrong one died.
And that reminds me of the the John Mulaney joke. Yeah, where he was talking about his his girlfriend or whatever was like, I like that movie Ray, but I could have done without the whole little brother dying thing. It's like, so could Ray Charles. Done without that.
That's funny. Yeah. I think it's also interesting that like the movie kind of ends where it's like, and then he got out of rehab and he's all fine and nothing ever happened again, where it's clear that like there was more to it. Yeah.
I wanted this is the opposite of The Aviator, where I would have liked more from Ray, where I could have seen like more of him like actually, like slowly recovering and slowly like, being there for his son and stuff. I like when they, transition to like him getting in honors and he has his whole family there and they've obviously like mended things, but like I would have liked to see more of that transition as well.
I agree. Like I feel like they spent too much time on him being shitty to women and not enough time on his like addiction and recovery and the aftermath of that. Like that all would have been a lot more interesting to me. And I think that's kind of where I come from on that. I will also say that this is the infidelity slate. I think only $1 Million Baby does not have any infidelity.
Oh, we're about to get into real infidelity coming up.
Oh yeah,
yeah, even more extreme. Not even more extreme. They're both extreme, but yeah. Any other thoughts on Ray though? Good conversation about music biopics as well. I mean, we'll talk about more, obviously.
I mean, he does have a whole like another baby with another or almost another. Well, the baby does get born, but he has a whole other baby with another lady, and then she's like, "You're gonna leave your family for me?" And I'm like, what in your right mind do you think Ray Charles is gonna leave his original family for you just because you had a kid? That makes no sense.
I can simply see it from her perspective though. It's you did this to me, Yeah, you left me with this baby. You should take care of it too. But yeah.
But she knew that he was with someone else. Like what? Yeah. Anyways, cheating is weird no matter what. Everyone involved is weird.
Well, you set up a good segue, didn't you? Anything else on Ray before we move on?
I'll just say that I think Kerry Washington is the unsung hero of this movie. Her performance is underrated, and even the stuff like you were just saying, that scene, that stuff with Regina King, different, is the way she handles that whole thing. It's all very good. I think she is underappreciated in this film.
I wonder if Tarantino watched this and was like, this whole slate, and was like, I really like that Leonardo DiCaprio guy. I think he could be like a really, really good villain. But I really like Jamie Foxx and Kerry Washington. Let me put him in the movie together when he made Django. Maybe that was my best Quentin Tarantino impression.
It was pretty good.
Thank you.
You didn't defend enough unconscionable things, but otherwise it was fine.
Yeah, I didn't drop any slurs either, but I will never do that. So sorry. Footman. All right, Ray, nominated for 6 awards, wins 2, wins Best Actor for Jamie Foxx, and sound mixing. Obviously great if you're going to have him singing some stuff and having some pre-recorded stuff, like a really good mix there. I think those are 2 very well-deserved awards. Also nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Taylor Hackford, Best Costume Design, and Best Film Editing. But cheating! Let's talk about cheating, and not necessarily drug abuse, but alcohol abuse. Let's talk about Sideways. Chad, tell us about Sideways.
Sideways, directed by Alexander Payne, written by Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor. Cinematography by Phelan Papamichael. Music by Rolf Kent. That better not be any Merlot, or I'm leaving. Starring Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church, Virginia Madsen, Sandra Oh, Mary Louise Burke, Jessica Hecht, Lee Brooks, Missy Doty, MC Gainey, and Alicia Rayner. Synopsis: 2 friends from college visit wine country for a bachelor weekend as the groom wants to sow his wild oats before marriage, and his friend grieves the relationship with his ex, tries to get his book published, and searches for new love. Based on the 2004 novel Sideways by Rex Pickett.
Yes. For anyone who's not watching but listening to this on either YouTube or podcast, Matt has poured himself a glass of a red wine. He can tell us what it is.
Pinot Noir.
A Pinot Noir. Okay. To set the mood for Sideways, because it's a mood piece. Alexander Payne, he's so good at like just giving the perfect like tone and mood for what the movie is. Like the Hawaiian kind of low key vibes of the Descendants, and then the colder Nebraska black and white, and what else have we talked about of his on here? The Holdovers, kind of that old kind of nostalgic feel in the grain.
The
like
Holdovers, maybe the best movie of the 2020s. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, it was our best picture winner there. But he and I would say the Descendants might be the best of the 2010s, and maybe this is the best of the 2000s. We'll see. But I do think, yeah, like he's just so good at creating an atmosphere and a vibe and a tone and making you care about something. And this is a little different because Descendants and Nebraska and the Holdovers are about like actual character dynamics, and this is too, but this is very heavily based on a single subject matter of wine, which I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about the planes thing, how I'm not into planes, so the Aviator wasn't always my cup of tea, whereas this one, I like wine enough, but I'm Italian, I should like wine more, but I'm not as much of a connoisseur sommelier of it, but like I still was so engrossed in this like whole like wine country vibe and atmosphere and culture. So really, really just so amazing that he's able to get me invested in something I'm not invested in. And now makes me want to actually go and pour myself a glass and go to wine country and just spend a weekend out there, even though there is a lot of bad stuff that ensues, I will say. But Matt, you poured the glass. Tell us what you love or hate maybe about Sideways.
Also, the glass, it's in my Holdovers glass.
I love it. Yes, I noticed that. Yes.
We don't drink a lot here, so all of my wine glasses are packed up, so I'm just using them.
It's a very fitting second option, I will say.
You got any Miller High Life as champagne of beers?
Okay. So let me tell you about this movie. Number one, let me just say that Dylan is right about how it makes you feel about wine. I know plenty of people after seeing this that really liked it, and they were just like, and it really convinces you that wine isn't disgusting, because a lot of people don't like wine. And I think that is a credit to the film itself. I will say, when this movie was coming out, I was just getting into wine, just beginning to understand wine. And one of my first very, 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 very powerful opinions on wine is that I fucking hate Merlot. And that was true before I saw this movie. Some people accuse me of only quoting this movie and whatever. I hate Merlot. You bring a Merlot to my table, I'm not drinking it.
Like the Natty Low.
But I do love Pinot Noir. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. It's my favorite wine to grab toward. There are better and worse Pinot Noirs. This one is a Sam's Club $8 wine. It's not the best, but it is better than other $8 wines to me, because
Thomas Hayden Church would probably love it.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'll put this down.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love the sipping and the bidding, but we also need the thoughts.
Yeah. So, but while I came out of $1 Million Baby saying this is going to win Best Picture, this was still my favorite movie of that year. This is still my favorite movie. Well, no, because Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I hadn't seen that. I saw that in theater. So I guess this wasn't my favorite of that year, because I had seen that. This was my favorite of the slate of nominees. It's probably my second favorite of that year, honestly. I love this movie. I have loved this. I own it. I have watched it many times. When it came out, it's interesting because at Hollywood Video, we had this thing called guaranteed in stock. So certain movies came out, we would get a lot of them. And if we didn't have it, then you got a voucher to get it free next time. And this was one of them, which I thought was weird. But they also did it for About Schmidt, which also was weird for them to do. It's not like those were like huge box office money making movies. I don't know what their deal with Alexander Payne is with for the guaranteed in stock. But we had like a whole display like hanging from the ceiling. They were advertising the crap out of this. And I knew that people in Enid, Oklahoma were not going to care about this movie at all. And that ended up being true. But not from lack of trying from me. I told every person I could see, or I came across, this movie is awesome. I love this movie. Do you like movies about a bunch of people talking about stuff? This is a movie for you. I remember when we got the box in, because they would send us boxes of the movies usually about a week before they came out, and we could like check them out to watch them beforehand, so we'd know what for recommendations. Yeah. I remember when this came out, I went to the office of our video store and just put it in a laptop and just watched it in the office. I didn't even take it home. Because I loved it so much, and I was like, I don't want to wait another second now watching this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've talked a lot. Now I hope you guys didn't hate it.
I did not hate it. Chad, did you like this one?
Yeah, I like this one. I don't. It's interesting. I'd like to do an Alexander Payne ranking at some point. I feel like this would be like on the like upper half, but like not something that I instantly loved. But it's my journey with this one's interesting because I've always heard about this movie, like he shit on Merlot and then the sales dropped, and just like fun stories like that. Like oh my god, this movie had that big of an impact. And then I'm just like, kind of like I need to get around to watching that movie, and I finally did. Carrie and I actually started it a while back and never finished it. And then when we came up to this, I was like, all right, we finally need to finish Sideways. So I like skimmed through that part that I watched again, and then we started where we stopped and finished it. And yeah, I just think it's like a nice little movie about like these two characters and like just the ideas that they have. Like the one character who is going a little too hard of wanting to get with other women before getting married, which I've never really understood that. Like,
yeah,
even like the whole like bachelorette party stuff where it's like you go crazy and sex and drugs and all this stuff like that. I just never understood like that vibe. I'm more of like, let's play some board games or something like that. Rather,
you're the Paul Giamatti for sure of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm Paul. He goes really hard, so much so that he's like, all right, we're gonna get together, we're gonna open up our own wine shop. You're going to be able to publish. I'm going to your books on the side. I'm going to be able to. It's only 2 hours away. I can go. He's like trying to create this whole new life, and I've kind of been there in a way where like Dylan's lived in New York City. I'll go to like New York City, and I'll be like, it's so big, it's so magical. What would it be like to live here? What if I lived this life where I lived in New York City or just anywhere? Like lived in California, lived in Orlando, like where I could go to Disney World all the time, just be like a big Disney guy.
Mm-hmm.
I could go there all the time. What if I lived this life and just like thinking about like your, not appreciating your life, but then thinking about like how it could be if you lived this and like, oh, like, Sandra, oh, like she's so awesome and stuff. And I really get along with her, but like not thinking like long term where like, what are you missing out on when you actually give in to all these impulses of anybody you've ever seen that you've been like, what would life be like if I was with that person? And then, actually like kind of realizing like, I fucked up. We need to go get that wallet. And I don't know. I've been in like this weird state and I fucked up and I need to get that wallet. I need to get those rings. It's very important. And I've been crazy this whole movie. And all this stuff, and I don't know. I like the dynamics of all that, and the differences between the two guys, and how Paul is just like this kind of hopeless romantic, and he's holding on to this, thing that's not going to happen. And fucking, I love Gretchen from Breaking Bad, and she ends up being his ex-wife, and then I'm like, oh, of course it's her, and I just kind of hated her when he talked to her on the phone. And then she's like, maybe you shouldn't come. And I'm like, fuck you. Why do you get to come and he doesn't get to come? He's like the best man. What are you talking about? And but then they have like, a moment at the end and stuff. But yeah, you always have like he's so unsure of himself, and he has that moment where he can get the kiss, and then he rethinks it, and then he doesn't, he goes back to but the moment's passed and stuff. And just I don't know. I have to find all this really interesting. It's some great like Alexander Payne stuff, and I could see myself rewatching this, especially with like the funny moments where he goes to get the wallet and stuff. That whole
was such a good sequence.
Yeah. And then I could see rewatching this and getting onto Matt's level of holy shit, because I do love Alexander Payne's films. So
yeah, I'm a big Payne fan too, and it's funny because every time I watch another one, I'm like, oh, maybe this is the one where I'll be a little like warmer on it, or cooler on it. But I'm like, no, this is another great Alexander Payne film. Like I really just have loved every single one we've watched for this show, to where I'm like, when I piece it together, the 4 big ones I've seen that we've covered for the show, I'm like, well, The Descendants is always my favorite because it was the first one, but I'm like, but Nebraska's so good. But I'm like, this is better than Nebraska. But then I'm like, is The Holdovers the worst of those 4? No, it's got to be the best because it's Christmas. But I'm also like, no, but The Descendants. And then I'm like thinking about this. I'm like, but this is the best screenplay. And that's where I think he's just such a consistent filmmaker. And I haven't seen Downsizing. I haven't seen all the movies he's made, but like I do think of the ones I've seen, he's just really fired every single time on all cylinders.
Did you mention Election?
I haven't seen that one yet, so that's another one I've got to check out. And it's another thing where I feel like that's another one where when I look at rankings, that's at the top of a lot of people's lists. And this is I feel like the ones you see most at the top of people's lists are this and Election. But I do also think just having done the show, like, and watching Nebraska so many times and seeing The Descendants when it came out in theaters and just falling in love with it and reading the book, like, he can do no wrong for me. Cinematically, but yeah, like I really do think this is just one of my favorite directors, and this is one of his best works. And I just think the acting is so consistent in all his films. I do love how you get such polar opposites with Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church, to the point where like, do they even like each other? You know, and I think that's a big question of the central conflict. It's like they respect each other, they love each other, but it's the Ladybird thing. Do you love me, but do you like me? And I think that's a really interesting thread in this film too. It's like they love each other clearly, but do they feel like they almost have to be with each other because they really don't have anyone else? Because Thomas Hayden Church clearly can't like commit to like his individual relationships. He clearly has to fly free and go, you know, crazy and wild with all these different people. Can he form really actual genuine relationships, or are there always like, you know, something in return, like a favor in return because of that? And we see that with all his connections he makes. It's all because he wants to sleep with them. He's not making genuine connections with these people. He's using his celebrity to make these connections. And Paul Giamatti, who says like they've been best friends ever since they were roommates in college, but I'm like, is that because he also hasn't been able to make new friends? Because while Thomas Hayden Church doesn't feel very genuine as a person, I feel like Paul Giamatti also feels like he just struggles to connect with people because of, you know, just his own narcissism getting in the way and his own ego, or also his insecurity, which I think is just what's so layered about all of the character work in this thing. You know, and setting it in wine country where he can kind of be a snob and can kind of be an asshole about it, yet so endearing still. You still root for him. And then when he finally finds something, you're like, oh, finally. And then, of course, he's holding on to this lie, which is not even his own lie. It's his buddy's relationship, but because he was holding the secret, that relationship falls apart for himself. And the idea of like, you know, when do you choose your friendship, when do you choose your relationships, and are you better off without this best friend who just ruined this really great thing for you? And I love that they were able to have like a nice ending, him and Virginia Madsen's character. But I also see a world where that ends where he's not able to reconcile that because he chose to stand by his friend, and stupidly so. But then you also get a lot of great moments even at the end with him and Thomas Hayden Church that I think kind of reinforce why they do still need each other, even though it's a dysfunctional friendship. And I just think that's what's so beautiful and so nuanced, on top of all this great knowledge and great understanding of wine culture and this great use of atmosphere and setting and just vibes. Like, I think, again, he's such a vibe filmmaker, and I think the vibes here are immaculate. Every single film, that's the one thing I think that everyone talks about in a positive light are the vibes. Like, wine country, Hawaii, you know, Nebraska, for better or worse in that sense. But, you know, and the holdovers, like the aesthetic, the vibe, you know, I just think that is where Alexander Payne shines most. And this winning screenplay just warms my heart because it really is, I think, some of the best writing in any 2000s film. Like I'm not going to say it's the best film of the 2000s because in this very year I have 2 films that I put in my top 10 of all time. So, you know, and this one doesn't have Sun in the title, so it can't qualify for my favorite of that year just by happenstance. That's a joke. It just so happens that my top 2 films have Sun in the title. But yeah, I think this is brilliant and really just such a smart movie. And again, characters are doing things you don't like. Yeah, and I think that's a testament of like separating, advocating for something versus showing something and clearly showing us that that's not the right thing to do. Right. You
know, number one, the vibe for Nebraska is not Nebraska; it is the truck. Yeah. But number 2, it's interesting. You're talking about these best friends. When this came out, my best friend was pretty well opposite of me. It's funny because that's one of the things that attracted me most to this is that those 2 characters are both an amalgamation of me and my best friend at the time. We're both. My personality is closer to Thomas Hayden Church, but like my focus and areas and like responsibility type stuff, I was way closer to the Giamatti character. Those things were opposite for my friend. And so we're like kind of the opposite. And we had a very similar situation or very similar relationship where like he would do these things and I'd be like, why would you do these things? Like and we still maintained it. We're not really friends so much anymore, but it is what it is. That's just because I got married and moved on. So that's pretty much the thing that happened there. But there's a musician called his name is Rich Mullins. He is a Christian musician, but he's one of the greatest. He is the greatest songwriter of all time, in my opinion. So I have not let go of him, even though I'm not into that religion. But he has a song called "Brother's Keeper," and the beginning of that song goes, "The plumber's got a drip in his spigot, the mechanic's got a clank in his car, the preacher's thinking thoughts that are wicked, and the lover's got a lonely heart. My friends are not the way I wish they were; they are the way they are."
Wow.
And that's kind of how that's how I feel that this movie kind of that's the tone I feel like of this movie.
Yeah.
They are not the friends that they wish they had. They are the friends they have. And I think that's that's I really, you're right about Alexander Payne and the way that he it's vibes, it's the dialogue, it's the interactions between people, it's all of that, and this just has so much of it, and a lot. His movies are generally always really funny, but not like set up punchline type comedy. They're very kind of subtle comedy. They're this dramedy comedy that it's not really going to appeal to a lot of people, and that's what he really gets. That scene where he has to gather up all the things and he's running across the street while she's all angry. The way he tiptoes across, that is so funny, but also like very serious. Like I really love. Yeah.
I think the best thing one last thing that you touched on was like you were talking about your own personal friendship with your friend who was very similar to both these characters. You were very similar to both these characters, and how like you guys got married and moved on type deal. And I think that's a big part of this too. Is this all ends in the wedding and Paul Giamatti finally like reconciling things with Virginia Madsen, and I think that's really important because like. Yeah, like our lives take different turns, and I think ultimately over time, unless they're like your like friends that are friends of both the couple, sometimes like usually you'll put more investment into your own personal family, and sometimes your friends, you'll always have your friends, but not all your friends will stick by your side through it all. And then you'll find more friends later in life. Like obviously, like Chad was married before I met him, and now we're like two of the best friends. You as well, Matt. So I'm like, that's the kind of thing is like you find friends later down the line too, and not that your old friends don't mean anything to you, but there's clearly sometimes a moving on point, and I think that's really cool that this movie kind of ends. It almost feels like this is the point where they will move on, and this was like their last kind of moment at the peak of their friendship. And sometimes it goes dark, and Paul Giamatti probably questions the friendship and all, but ultimately it ends in a point where I think they can both move forward individually and still have this together, this experience that they've really grown from, which I think is beautiful and kind of is essentially at the core of all his movies, is learning how to grow as a person while kind of closing a chapter. This old man's walk to Nebraska to get that lottery ticket only for it to kind of have this closing chapter and realize that was all for nothing, or spreading the mom's ashes and the descendants, or the holdovers and him leaving the school. Like it always has a finality to it, which is also setting up something even greater to come that we just won't see as the audience, but we can kind of fill in our heads like this next journey for these characters, which is beautiful. Yeah. Chad, anything else on Sideways?
No, I mean, you guys touched on a lot of really great stuff, especially like the personal stories about friends and stuff like that. Because we've all had like friends that like, we love them in a sense, but then like there's certain times where you just like have kind of an imperfect relationship with them. Maybe they make choices that you don't agree with, but like at the end of the day, you're still friends, and you kind of like cover for each other and stuff like that. Maybe you shouldn't have, but kind of a thing where it's like if what I'm saying is I think it feels very realistic and very relatable to where like maybe I don't know if you're gonna be the Hayden Church kind of a guy, but like, maybe you are, and or maybe you're the Paul Giamatti type, and they're very different, but I think that's kind of what makes them fit together so well sometimes, because they are just so different that they, they're not the same. And it just like, you always have kind of like those friends where you might be more of the Paul Giamatti, but you have those Hayden Churches that are kind of out there and stuff like that, and want very different things. But
and I think you can find yourself in both. Like I think for
true.
like the snob wine aspect, I think a lot of people are more Thomas Hayden Church, where they're like, it's wine. Like I don't know the difference. Like it's wine.
Right.
It's like a lot of people are like with that with movies. I'm like, it's a movie. Yeah, well, yeah, it was good. It was a movie, and
true.
it's like no, but like there's good movies and bad movies. But then you also have like the lover side of things, where you would never think twice about cheating on someone, let alone a week before your wedding, let alone actually like investing yourself in their kid. Like that's where I think a lot of people would not be like him, but some people would. And that's where it's different.
Yeah, and you just like think about just like how like people's personalities, and you're just like, how would you like just have like a tirade of sexual exploits like right before you get married, and then like
I don't know.
That's such a weird way to start the journey of marriage, where you have this hanging over you. Like she might not know, but and so then it's like, how is that going to be going forward? That's very poor Thomas Hayden Church's Christine, I think her name is Thomas Hayden Church's future wife, because like Jesus, because I doubt she was going off doing that stuff. You never know, but probably not. No. Especially if all those ring stuff meant so much to her, and then it only meant so much to him like when he realized he was being a scumbag.
My new favorite word.
That's my favorite word. But yeah, I think this is just a very well written movie, and well shot, well acted, all that stuff. And I'm glad I finally got to watch it, because so many people talk about it all the time. Now I can make fun references to it, like I did with Matt earlier.
Yeah, me too. Like I started to watch this once on a plane, and it was just not the vibe. It was such a loud plane, and I don't think I could settle into it. It almost I was like, oh, this is too slow and boring for a plane ride. I need something a little bit more entertaining to like keep me awake and keep me energized, and something that's not as like meditative. It ended up being much more entertaining and funny than I gave it credit for. And like I'm talking like the first 3 minutes, I was like, nah, this isn't it. So I've watched 3 minutes of this before, and I'm finally able to like watch this whole thing. And yeah, I think it's I don't want to say masterpiece, because like he's made 4 amazing films. I don't know what outranks the rest, but it's damn good. Damn good. Yeah.
I also just real quick want to talk about Thomas Hayden Church and how he was. I knew him from Wings. He was in a sitcom called Wings that I really liked when I was younger. This was kind of his resurgence, but it's thanks to this resurgence that we got, some would say, the only good part of Spider-Man 3, but in my opinion, the best part of Spider-Man 3, which is his casting as Sandman, which is excellent.
Yes. Such a good casting, such a great performance. We may talk about later. We'll see. He was the front runner. He didn't win, but lost to Morgan Freeman, who I don't think many people at the time were very upset that Morgan Freeman was getting an Oscar. But Sideways, nominated for 5 awards, wins one big one, adapted screenplay. The other screenplay winner wasn't even nominated. It's best film of that year, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but that's okay. Also nominated for Sideways was picture, director for Alexander Payne, supporting actor for Thomas Hayden Church, and supporting actress for Virginia Madsen. Notice a name that's missing. Somehow the Academy snubbed Paul Giamatti for this, which I think is one of the most egregious snubs, which we'll probably also talk about. But let us get into our ranking first. Then we will talk about our acting superlatives. I know Chad has to run soon, so we'll keep this a little bit briefer. Briefer? Yeah, briefer. I was right. Keep this brief. As I say the same sentence 4 times and make this longer than it has to be. Matt, what is your number 5 here in this slate?
My number 5 is, I think it's going to be The Aviator.
Okay. Chad, what is your number 5?
The Aviator.
Oh, boy. My number 5 is Ray. Matt, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is Ray. It was oscillating between those two, but with our conversations, I went Ray up higher.
Okay. Chad, what is your number 5? Or 4, sorry.
Finding Neverland.
Okay. And my number 4 is also Finding Neverland. So Finding Neverland... Wait, let me just write these down because these are different than I... Okay, cool. Matt, what is going to be your number 3?
My number 3 is Finding Neverland.
Okay. Chad, what is going to be your number 3?
I was switching my 2 and my 3 a lot, and then the conversation had me, not for Ray, the conversation for Sideways made me put Ray at number 3.
Okay. And I will be honest, my conversation with y'all about my 2 and 3 also changed. Because now I have the Aviator at number 3. It was number 2. I changed it. It is now my number 3. So what is going to be your number 2, Matt?
My number 2 is $1 Million Baby.
All right, Chad,
our conversations made me oscillate between Finding Neverland and $1 Million Baby, but I ended up going with my original on that.
Yeah. Chad, what's your number 2? I think you already said it, but
Sideways.
Yes. And my number 2 was originally my number 3, but with the conversation, I am going to squeak it forward above the Aviator, which is $1 Million Baby. Which means, Matt, what is going to be your number 1 here?
You and I have the same number 1 with a bullet. Dylan, it is Sideways.
All right. And Chad, your number 1.
Every single time we have Matt on, Matt go that's this one.
But it's not a Billy Wilder movie this time.
Sure, but then I'm sitting here like, okay, but it's not the right one. The right one is $1 Million Baby. No.
Yeah. Which is going to be my number 2 because my number 1 is also Sideways, which means our number 1 is Sideways. But Chad and Matt and I, we all liked it, and that's why it's our number 1. That's how it works. Yeah.
When we were talking about, because I wasn't sure, and we were talking about Sideways, and I was talking about Sideways to you guys, I was like, wow, I did like this way more than I thought I did. And then, going through that, because I was like, no, I don't want $1 Million Baby to not win. And then, it was going through it, and I was like, you know what? Sideways is a really good movie. It is deserving of the win. Yeah. So.
And here's what I will say. On 2 of the instances where Matt has guested, we all unanimously picked Dead Poets, and we all unanimously picked Sense and Sensibility. So we're now 2 and 2.
Right.
So maybe the next time Matt guests, he'll either put a title over the edge that you won't like, or we'll all be in commonality again. We'll have to see. But let's get quickly into our acting prizes, and then we'll recap at the very end. But Matt, you're going first for actor, I believe, yes?
Yeah, and when Dylan asked if I wanted to go first for actor or actress, he was like, I think I know, and I said, you are correct. I didn't even tell him because he knew that it was going to be this, and I think he knows what it's going to be, and it's going to be one of the biggest acting snubs of all time, which is Paul Giamatti for Sideways.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had down already. I wrote it down for you.
It was a shock at the time when it happened, and it's amazing that he got extra bites of the apple. It felt like Cinderella Man was making up for that, and that's why I thought he was going to win. But George Clooney ended up winning for Syriana, and I still think that was wrong. And then we thought that maybe The Holdovers was going to be him finally getting that, and at least he got nominated. But it's just a brilliant performance that I love, and every time I go back to it, I love it even more.
Well, hey, considering Michael is not doing great right now in reviews, makes me think that Coleman Domingo Oscar might not happen, which means there's a good chance this year he'll at least get nominated, Paul Giamatti, for the Jesse Eisenberg musical that he's doing for A24. So let's hope that maybe this is the year we see Paul Giamatti win for a real Oscar. But Chad, who's going to be your best actor here?
Maybe a under the radar one, but it's the performance. I was like, oh my God, this performance made the movie that it's in. And, there's a lot of kind of stigma against this type of performance that the Academy normally doesn't nominate. Freddie Highmore.
Whoa! Okay, cool. We didn't even really talk much about him. Yeah.
So Freddie, I didn't because I knew I was doing this. I was like, you know what? I'm doing this.
Okay.
But all the way back when we were talking about Finding Neverland, I was like, I'm doing Freddie Highmore. Because when I watched the movie, I was like, I remember Freddie Highmore being good in this, I think. Or something like that. Like, this is where he started. And that dude, Freddie Highmore, is just so incredible that it just feels like he should. I mean, I know he's gone onto TV with The Good Doctor and stuff like that now, but feels like he should have just had a bigger career in film and stuff, because he is just the best part of that movie, in my opinion, where it's it's actually a little weird because I didn't have one of the negatives where I was because he's so the other kids are just kind of kids, but he's got so much depth to him where he feels so much, and he's upset about his father dying, and then he knows kind of what's coming with his mother, and he just feels so betrayed about life and stuff, and just so jaded that he can't see the magic, but he's the most important part of the magic and stuff in the movie, it feels like. And yeah, I already talked about like the scene where it's like, how would you like me to name him Peter? Would that be okay with you? And he's like, yeah. And he's like trying to write his own stuff. Yeah, he's just like something else. It's kind of like when you have like a Henry Thomas, an E.T., or like a Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. It's like Freddie Highmore in Finding Neverland. I'm like, not enough people talk about that performance. I see it and I'm like, what is going on? He is like the best actor in this goddamn thing, crushing it. And
nice.
But the only thing is, like, the negative that I forgot to mention earlier is that, like, when you get to the end of it and he's still kind of like mad at, what's his name from A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp's character. When he's mad at Johnny Depp's character, and
J.M. Barry is his name.
J.M. Barry, and I'm just like, what? Why? I thought we were past this, but I guess not. And but yeah, that's such an incredible performance.
I forgot to mention, because like, what a cool performance to pick. I think there's so many acting performances that would have also filled in here nicely, but it's such a you pick, but also such a great pick. Like, I feel like he is, in my opinion, also like my highlight for that movie too, and I didn't really talk about it much when we covered it. Just a question though, along that line, were Coen Brothers inspired by this movie or this guy to call that movie Inside Llewyn Davis, considering their kids' names are, their last names are Llewellyn Davies? Or is that just total coincidence, you think?
I think that's coincidence.
That's just so interesting, because I was watching this and I kept hearing Llewellyn Davies and I was like, Inside Llewyn Davis, what? Just a curious point, but I love that performance. I alluded to it when we just talked about it. I said we'd talk about him later, because it is, in my opinion, the second best performance in a movie that I love. But Matt took the best one, so I'll take the second best in that movie, which is my favorite of the slate next to him, which is Thomas Hayden Church. Because I think for every Giamatti introverted moment, you need your extroverted Thomas Hayden Church moment to counter it. I think it's a great pairing. I think you can't have one without the other, and the fact that one got nominated and the other didn't was so sad. And I honestly wonder if Paul Giamatti had gotten nominated and had been more of a contender. I still don't think he would have beaten Jamie Foxx just based on the narrative and what people appreciated at the time. But I do think Thomas Hayden Church, he was a front runner to win, lost also because $1 Million Baby had a lot of the momentum there, but really sad that he couldn't win, because I think it's my favorite supporting performance of this slate. Even though I do think not Paul Giamatti, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Alan Kim probably gave the best supporting actor performance that year. But this is definitely close. But it's great. Cool.
I will just real quick about those two. It's really a two-hander on those performances, because you get both sides of it are so good. The accusation of him chewing gum is so good, but also like his reaction to it, like everything about those performances works so well together. And yeah, I'm glad that you picked that so that they could both be on here.
Yeah, I was tempted to pick another performance, because I'm first reactor, so I was tempted to pick another performance from Sideways, and I was really close. But there's one that I think is just, like, for me, just a masterclass in performance, and it's a little bit shocking because I know we had mixed reactions to that performance in this slate. But I also wanted to give love for this, because this was originally my number 2 film, which is The Aviator, and I'm going to go Cate Blanchett. I just think she's already in our Hall of Fame, so I'm not giving her any more flowers to get her in there. But I just think she's amazing, and this is one of my favorite roles of her. It's impressive to see her perfectly capture Katharine Hepburn's essence, and like you said, Matt, like, she was a larger than life person, even bigger than her movies let on, and I think that's really cool to see, because there are moments where she is a little more restrained, and that really packs a punch when they are, and she's not in the whole movie, but when she's on, those are my favorite scenes of the movie. So she's, I think, if not the greatest, one of the top 5 greatest actresses working right now. And I think this is definitely a showcase for her, even though I think Tar is still her greatest work. But this is still very close. And she won the Oscar for this, reasonably so. But yeah, Chad, what's going to be your best actress pick?
Number 1 with the bullet, Hilary Swank.
Yep, you're going there.
Of course. I mean, for me, this is just like the performance. I think maybe, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's hard. There's a lot of great performances in the slate, but Hilary Swank just, like, is something else. It's just like there's that there's something about that character that's special. I think it's because she's so special. It's kind of, we're always like with the Shawshank. It's kind of like the Tim Robbins, and so there's something else about them, kind of a deal that's special. And with here, it's with her, and just like a lot of like the looks that she gives. Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman, just like the way she has to, like, when she's like in the bed and she's done everything to try to, be good with her family. And then they pull this shit and show up and try to get her to sign things and stuff like that, rather than just showing the general like care for her. And she's got that like lip quiver, like, get the fuck out of my room right now. Piece of shit. I never want to see you again. If you come back here, I'm going to sell your fucking house right under your fat, lazy ass. And I'm just like, good job, Hillary. You're doing it. And so yeah, it's like every little thing, and just like the stories that she tells, and just I don't know. It's like the cinematography, but also her performance. Just all of it comes together to just be, just one of the great performances, I think.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm glad you picked it. Very close. She was my number 3. So yeah, like
nice.
She was in my top 3 for sure. All right, Matt, who's going to be your best actress pick? Was yours picked, or are you getting your number 1?
No, here's the thing: is sometimes in when we have 3, when you have 3 people on here, the person who gets to go last gets to do something a little fun. And I wanted to do that, but then Winslet wasn't picked, and so now I'm like weighing this thing. Like
she was my 3.
I thought for sure it was going to be Blanchett and Winslet, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be fine to do this. I still think I'm going to go with my fun one because it's an actress that I really like who does not get her flowers often enough. She is always consistently incredible in everything that she's in. She's a little bit typecast, but she's still always excellent, and that is Margot Martindale. So I really want to give Margot Martindale some love here because I really love Margot Martindale in basically everything she's ever been in. Also, Ricky Lindholm is part of Garfunkel and Oates, which is one of my favorite comedy bands. But I just want to mention her there. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Margot Martindale. It's a small role, but it's very effective. And again, like I said, I know those people. So when she gives her the house and she turns and says, "You shouldn't have done this," like,
yeah.
If we bought my father-in-law a house right now, he would turn to us and say, "You shouldn't have done this." It's that kind. Like, I know these people, and she was perfect, and I really liked her.
She nailed it. Yeah,
I really want to give her some love. Is what I'm saying here.
My second was Regina King.
Nice. And I will say, for what it's worth, Kate Winslet is not alone. She did get into our Hall of Fame when we picked her for Titanic, because she was also picked on the episode you were on for Sense and Sensibility as well. So Kate Winslet is in our Hall of Fame. So I love that you chose Margot Martindale. That's such a cool choice. But let's rattle these off quickly, and then I'll tease the next slate, and then we'll get out of here. But our pick for Best Picture is going to be Sideways. My best actor, Thomas Hayden Church for Sideways. Chad's is Freddie Highmore for Finding Neverland. Matt's is Paul Giamatti for Sideways. And our best actresses, mine is Cate Blanchett for The Aviator. Chad's is Hilary Swank for My $1 Million Baby, and Margot Martindale is Matt's pick for $1 Million Baby. So there we go. Not much love for Ray in our prizes, but again, great performance as well. And Chad said Regina King was his backup too. So great performances across the board. So many performances that we didn't even pick that are amazing. Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Leonardo DiCaprio, Johnny Depp, Virginia Madsen, Jamie Foxx, Regina King. So many great ones. So Kate Winslet. So I'm very glad that we got some good representation here. No one joining the Hall of Fame, though. Cate Blanchett picks up her 3rd here, having already been in it.
That didn't put Margot Martindale in the Hall of Fame?
No, sadly not, but we'll have to see. If only the Academy had rightfully nominated Instant Family, she could have been, but they didn't, and I stand by that's a top 10 film of that year. But yeah, let us now just close the book on 2004. Anything else on 2004 that we want to mention before we close this chapter?
Thank you.
Go watch the episode of The Village, or the episode of Framewreck where Carly, Dylan, and I talk about The Village. That's from 2004.
Yes. Nice. Another movie that could have been in the slate for sure.
I like that.
But yeah, we're going to take a break from our wish list next month because it is, of course, our retrospective this summer. So we are not going to be doing any wish lists until September. But August is all about the retrospective, and a huge year for that. That is 10 years ago, we had the year of 2016, which everyone knows is an infamous Oscar year because It's the year they announced the wrong film to win. So we're going to be talking about that esteemed year. We're not going to be alone because it is also, it's not Pride Month when we're recording, but, Pride Month is part of the summer as well. And we do have a gay film winning, a film with gay themes. And we have Carly joining us for a big slate. It's a lot of films, but we've had guests on long slates. We're going to hopefully get it down to a reasonable, maybe tasteful 3 or 4 hours with Carly talking about such amazing films of 2016 for the retrospective. Those films are Arrival, Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Hell or High Water, Hidden Figures, La La Land, Lion, Manchester by the Sea, and Moonlight. So that is a really good slate. Can't wait to revisit all of those. This was also the first and only year I went to the Best Picture Showcase in New York City. So I'm debating whether I want to watch them in the order I watched them in the showcase, or if I want to do my alphabetical thing here. I'll probably still do alphabetical because I have OCD, not as severe as Leonardo DiCaprio. But I'm gonna see if this will be a fun slate to revisit with Carly. But Matt, any thoughts? Thank you for being a guest as always. You're amazing, and we covered Framewreck Razzies of 2004 too, so this is going to be a really cool companion piece with that, even though that was years ago. But any thoughts on 2016 that you want to add before we
I forgot Hell or High Water was nominated, and I love that movie. So that's really great. I can't wait to see that episode to hopefully hear you guys talk about the disparity between the subject of Hacksaw Ridge's disdain for violence and Mel Gibson's love for violence, because that's my problem with that movie.
Interesting. Yeah, well, we'll definitely touch on that. But yeah, some great directors there: Denis Villeneuve and Damien Chazelle.
I love Arrival. That's such a good movie.
Damien Chazelle, Denzel Washington directing a film and starring in it. So really, really great films we'll talk about, and some that I'm excited to revisit to hopefully get great on that great level with, because there are movies that everyone else loves that I don't in that slate that I can't wait to hopefully 10 years later reappraise, because it was also my first year of college. I was seeing a lot of these in the city for the first time. So Chad, anything else on 2004 looking ahead into 2016?
Well, first off, thank you again, Matt. Matt always brings like that. He's such a great film fan. He brings all that like great like personal touch to it, but also just like, behind the scenes knowledge of stuff, and just like, so much personality and just like great vibes to the show. And so I always love
Old and Loud. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean it goes on long when you're here, but like that's because you have so many great things to say. And I can't wait to have you back because we've had you on so many times for a reason. So
yes, absolutely.
Let's going on to 2016. Very excited to have Carly back. We don't have a Tennessee Williams this time, but that's okay. Carly is going to have a lot of great things to say.
We have an August Wilson, so we'll say that.
I know which one she like adores, a couple that she like really loves too. So I'm excited to talk about those, but also talk about some of the more divisive ones, and also, like what Dylan said, revisit some of these to see how they shake up now, like 10 years later. So very excited for 2016.
Yes. Cool. Well, thank you, Matt. Is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to plug while we head out?
You can catch me on my channel, Matty Loves Movies. I do a Stephen King from Page to Screen show with Stacey Morris called Screen King. You can right now watch the Shawshank episode, the Shawshank Redemption episode with Dylan, which we talked about Shawshank a lot on this episode here, and you can go watch us talk about the novella Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption and its adaptation, the Shawshank Redemption. And I also want to mention that it's funny that they read the names wrong at that one, because it is interesting that the black gay movie is not the musical about jazz.
Period. That's where we'll end that. That's a good way to end that. That's great. I'll reuse that when we talk about it with Carly. Chad, anything else for you? Anything to plug?
Cinema Chad, welcome to Primetime Letterboxd.
Period. All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and stick around for the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. We got plenty of stuff coming, plenty of stuff we've already hit on with our wish list. Our wish list will be back in September. Well, I will have a pick for a year that I'm really, really excited for. I'll just tease you with this. L'chaim. Let's see you next time.